Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece Fates Intertwined by Demonheart12. What if the time difference between Luffy and Robin was much smaller? What would happen if he arrived on her island somehow before the Buster Call happened? How will their presence in each other's lives affect each other? Follow their adventures as they grow together and sail the seas in hopes of achieving their dreams. I don't own anything. Adios.
The brothers' grand escape, like hell that's happening, you old geezer, was the fiery remark of 10-year Ace, who was currently in a fierce shouting match with his grandfather. Now, he was 100% sure that the old man has gone insane if he thinks that he and his brother will go with his wacky plans. "Yeah, I'm not doing that. I promised Shanks I'd become a great pirate," argued a 7-year monkey D. Luffy back to his old man, who was now practically foaming at the mouth, while his brother facepalmed at how the younger sibling was ignoring the main issue at hand. However, all of their arguments fell on deaf ears as their grandfather, Marine Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp, punched both them on the head, sending both of the brothers flying. Both brothers now were moaning, sporting large bumps on their heads. He was furious that his grandsons aren't listening to him, especially after what happened recently, that should have wanted to become Marines more than ever now. "Nonsense, you two are going to become great Marines, whether you like or not. I won't allow my grandchildren to become some filthy pirates," yelled Garp back at his boys. Truly, he was beyond angry now. He had had the same argument over and over again with them, and yet they still refused. That's why he came with a very genius plan to make his knuckle-headed grandchildren beg to become Marines. "No way, I'm going to become a pirate, and a great one too," Luffy shouted, breaking Garp lines of thought, making him turn his attention back at the young child who cowered at the look he was given but continued on regardless. "I promised Shanks that I would become Pirate King and find a crew better than his, and this hat is a sign of our promise." The boy finished, flashing a smile as he clutched his straw hat tightly. This remark was enough to throw Garp into a rage state yet again, jumping the distance between him and his grandson in blink of the eye, punching him again full force to get his point through the little boy's thick skull. "Shut up," yelled Garp. The mere mention of Shanks was enough to make Garp thunder like a volcano. Though as he sees it, he can't be blamed. After all, it was due to Shanks that his grandson wanted to become a pirate. "Don't even mention his name after he poisoned your mind with useless pirate nonsense," growled Garp through his teeth. "Shanks is the best pirate ever, and I want to become better than him one day," replied Luffy, angry that his hero is being badmouthed. "He even saved my life from that sea king." Garp began massaging his temples. If this continued on, he was going to have a seizure. Sure, he was grateful Shanks saved his grandson, but seriously, there is no need to play with his mind. The thing that annoyed him the most was, and just to add a bonus, he even got you cursed. Garp yelled at his grandson. Ace, who was silent through the whole conversation, couldn't but agree with Garp, knowing about Luffy Devil Fruit, as Garp grabbed Luffy's arm and began to stretch it unnaturally. "No, he didn't," Luffy replied as he was trying to yank his arm from his grandfather's hand. "Shanks tried to force me to spit out the fruit. He didn't know I ate it in the first place." "Enough with that," Garp said with full authority in his voice. He was now going to try kindly to convince his grandchildren to become Marines through his plan. "Now listen to me. I'm going back Marine Ford, where I will talk to the fleet admiral to convince him to take both of you in, where you will be trained to become great Marines just like me." Garp finished with great smile, thinking about Admirals Luffy and Ace. He was so happy right now, nothing can ruin his mood until Ace spoke up. "Keep dreaming, you old geezer. I am going to become a great pirate one day, whether you like or not," Ace said with a voice full of conviction. He was going to be a pirate, and a great one, and he wasn't going to go with the old man's crazy plan. Furthermore, after what happened with Sabo, I'm not going to be a damn Marine even more. Just like his brother, all this earned him was a punch to top of his skull, causing him to groan in pain. Garp sighed. He was angry as much as the boys were, but there wasn't anything he can do. "Don't you see that what happens to pirates? They get killed regardless of their age." It only took him a moment to make a double on what he said, seeing the pain-ridden faces of the boys. Seeing what he just said was highly inappropriate, Garp took a deep breath and began to talk. "What I meant is that the world only sees pirates as villains. They don't care if they're children or not. To them it is best that they all die." He then looked at his boys, who bore very sad expressions, and continued, "Listen, I am truly sorry that your friend died in such a way." Hearing this, the boys' faces lifted up a little. Garp saw it as a sign that they have accepted to become Marines and proceeded to talk more. "Now, please be good boys. Ready your stuff, cause next time I am coming. We're going to Marine Ford to start training." He finished laughing heartily. The boys looked at the ground for a few moments before they lifted their heads and began to shout. "Get it through your head, we're not going with you, and we're becoming pirates." Both boys yelled in angry. This didn't do anything except snap out him of his happy mood for the second time this evening. He looked at his boys with a dark look that can be classified with serial killers staring down at their victims. He slowly stands up and walks to a tree, giving his back to it as he leaned on it. Flashing the boys a small grin, he began talking. If that is the case, then you leave no choice. Both boys looked at each confused at what the old man was talking about. No choice? What was he talking about? Then it hit them, the most important question: was he going to hurt them? No way. Sure, he was a little bit insane for the lack of a better term, but he loved them. He wouldn't, would he? Both boys slowly began to crawl backwards from him. Seeing he got the effect he wanted and his plan is going as expected, he carried on. Well boys, since you are planning to become pirates. He stopped a little, clearly not proud of what he was about to say, but it must be said, after all, it was for the boys' greater good. Jail is the only place you are going to next time I am coming back here, and to be specific, I am talking about impelled down. Both boys were clearly terrified but couldn't help but tilt their heads a little when their old man mentioned the prison. The muffled sounds of gasps tipped off Ace that whatever this place was, it was an absolute nightmare. Taking a look, he saw the bandits of the Dayton family all looking pale like a white sheet from fright. This caused Ace to look back at Garp, deeply disturbed. The old man was seriously messed up. He stood between him and Luffy, staring at Garp. He was about to speak when Garp started. Well, seeing as my work here is done, I am leaving. He stood up and started walking toward the Dayton house to talk to her. He gave the boys one last look and said, "Think wisely about your choices," leaving both boys blinking in disbelief. As Garp entered the house, Dayton rushed toward him. Dayton was middle-aged obese woman with rough curly orange hair. She had big lips in which she constantly held a cigarette. She was the leader of the Dayton bandits, however she was also the unofficial mother of Luffy and Ace. "Listen, you sick old bastard, I can accept a lot of things, but this just crosses the line," she snarled at Garp, who stood there unconcerned. Though a bit surprised, the woman he bullied for so long stood up to him. The boys has already suffered enough after Sabo's death. There is no need for them to get through whatever crazy things you have in mind. I mean, how you can even. Garp grew tired as Dayton carried on talking and babbling to no end. He was going to need a big jug of sake after this. Deciding she had talked long enough, he began, "Shut the hell up. Of course I'm not taking the boys to Hell on Earth or Marineford." Causing Dayton to blink in confusion and at the same gain a serious feeling of discomfort. "I'm merely tricking them," he carried on, smiling. "By the time I come back, they will begging to be Marines. This is just a part of my plan." The reaction for the bandits was slapping their foreheads or falling on their backs on the account of how stupid the plan sounded. "Dare I ask what that genius plan of yours is?" Dayton said weakly as she slumped against the wall. "Of course," Garp said. "The plan is that I threaten the boys to either take them to Marineford, or ship them away to prison. Next time I come, they will beg to become Marines if I let them stay here at Dawn Island," he concluded proudly, leaving a bunch of bandits gaping at the sheer stupidity of his so-called plan. "Are you even thinking how horribly wrong this can go?" Dayton asked. Truly, the boys could run away in the dark of the night to avoid Garp. "Nonsense, you making a fuss out of nothing," Garp laughed. "Nothing bad will happen. And don't forget to train them, all right?" he said as walked back to his ship. Dayton was left with terrible feeling. She stood up, turned, and walked to her room, simply muttering, "This is going to end badly." After Garp left to talk to Dayton, both boys sat there silently thinking about what their old man said. Was he truly going to send them to jail? Was he really going to force them to choose between being Marines or be sent to prison? No, it can't be, can it? These questions were rotating in the boys' heads, leaving them in a trance until Ace finally snapped out of it. He poked Luffy, signaling him it is time to go to their home. The walk to their home through the forest was unusually quiet. Both boys were deep in thought. They barely noticed that they passed the treehouse they called home. After climbing in their house, each boy took a corner, deeply disturbed from what they heard from their gramps. The uncomfortable silence stretched until Luffy decided to break the ice. "Ace, what are going to do? I don't want to become a Marine or go to prison," he screamed in utter fear. This only led him to world of pain as Ace punched him on the forehead, causing him to rub the assaulted area, letting out an audible "OWW." "I know, let me think, all right, and don't be such a crybaby," Ace replied, clearly frustrated with his brother panicking. "I'm not a crybaby. Yeah, whatever, now let me think, all right," Ace said as Luffy began to talk. He cut him off. "And no, we're not going to be Marines or go to jail," Ace said with a confident grin, although on the inside he was worried cause the only option they had was so crazy he couldn't think about. It was so reckless even he can't pull it off. But was there any other choice, he thought as slammed his head on the window frame of his house. He finally built up his courage and proceeded to talk. "Luffy, I think that we should." The words froze in his mouth. This choice was a desperate one and clearly too dangerous, but there was nothing they could. "We should," Luffy echoed his brother's words. "We should run away from Dawn Island." Ace finished gulping on the words he just said. Luffy's eyes widened as he heard the only option they had. This was crazy even by their standards. Sure, Luffy was reckless, but even he knew that they weren't strong enough to do that, and it all reflected in one clueless question. "What?" he screamed in shock. "You heard me, Luffy. We have no other option, or do you have another plan in mind?" he asked, clearly angry. Ah, said person replied dumbly. He also knew there was no other choice. I thought so, Ace said in a victorious tone, though it could be clearly it lacked any resolution behind it. He was just as frustrated as his little brother. Dayton's words about how he was weak, about how big the world is, about how if he died now no one would give a damn in the world about him shook him to the core. However, he was determined to get stronger, to prove his worth, and his Gramps wasn't going to stop him just because of some few fantasies he had about him and Luffy being Marines. As Luffy began to calm down after the initial shock, he sat down hugging his knees and asked Ace, "What about our promise with Sabo that we all set sail from here?" Ace knew how serious Luffy was about promises he made. That's why he had a solution for this. Simple: once we finish training on whatever island we go to, we will return here at the age of 17 and start our journey. Luffy hummed a little, processing the logic behind Ace's words. He looked like he was in deep thought, though it was clear he zoned out a few moments after starting to think. Okay, that's cool, but where are we going to in the first place? This got Ace off guard. The idea was born out of desperation given the situation that they're in, right? So he started to think where would be a location where Garp can't find them. Definitely not the East Blue. He's sure that Garp he memorized the place by heart and there is no location that he can't find them in it. The other blues maybe, he crossed out the South Blue since it's the nearest to the East Blue. So the West and the North remain. But how are they going to reach them in the first place, causing him to disregard them immediately? That left him with the Grand Line. It was the most logical choice if they wanted to escape Garp. With so many islands it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. We are going to the Grand Line, he said, causing the younger boy to blink owlishly at him. Okay, how do we get there? The boy wondered. One question ran through Ace's mind, since when Luffy is this careful, shaking his head, his mind returned to the issue at hand. He needed to find a way of transport, but it wasn't that easy since ships rarely came to this island. That's when Luffy spoke up. How about we hitch a ride on that merchant ship that Makino said docked 2 days ago and is leaving tomorrow morning? This caused Ace to shot up his head and exclaim, "Luffy, you're a genius." I am, the boy replied dumbly. Punching his brother as they had no time to waste, they had to be prepared to sneak on board the ship, so they quickly went out and uncovered what remained of their pirate fund, splitting it equally among themselves. They hunted a couple of small animals just in case they got hungry so they won't be caught on the ship. And by the time the morning came they were finally prepared. Then another issue aroused regarding how they going to sneak on the ship in the first place. This was a new problem that they didn't take into account due to their hurry in preparing themselves. Looking around, Ace saw their ticket inside the ship. The sailors were carrying barrels inside the ship. Smiling, he ushered for Luffy to follow him as they walked quietly down the road of the village to avoid raising any suspicion. They managed to reach the docks. Ace quickly spotted any empty barrel, run over to it, and brought it over to where Luffy was standing. Jumping in it, he called for Luffy. "Come on, what are you waiting for? Jump in." The straw-hatted boy obliged, thus allowing Ace to seal the top of the barrel so they won't be discovered. It only took moments, but the gentle lifting of the barrel tipped them off that their plan had worked flawlessly. That was until the sailor reached his destination, throwing the barrel over to his friend, who thankfully put it on the top. Had it been in the bottom they would have been stuck for who knows long. They patiently waited, or in Luffy's case getting knocked out constantly by Ace so he wouldn't blow their cover. Once the ship had finally moved a good distance away from their home, Ace popped the lead. Carefully examining his surroundings, he motioned to Luffy to get out. Carefully walking onto the deck, he noticed that some of merchants brought their children with them. This was too good to be true for them. This way they can blind in at least for short interval of time without being caught. His line of thoughts was cut off by his brother asking him, "So Ace, what do we do now?" "We simply wait till we reach the Grand Line, then we start training," he replied plainly. Looking back at the direction of his home, Luffy simply said, "I really hope." He looked up to the sky, watch over his Sabo, and wish his luck. Somewhere in the Grand Line, Garp was anxious. He didn't know why though, so he asked his right man Bogrit about it. "Have you ever felt you have done something really stupid and it is coming to bite you back?" The man looked at him and merely shook his head, causing Garp to wave that feeling away. Meanwhile, in the Grand Line, a medium-sized boat was peacefully sailing across the open waters. However, unlike the exterior of the boat, the interior wasn't as peaceful, as the people in it were busy squirming and running around. Some of them were reaching for books. Others were standing over what seemed to be old texts and scriptures trying to decode it. However, not even the mess inside can't be even compared to the emotional mess a certain individual on the boat was feeling. Currently, this person was standing over the railing of the boat. He was in deep thought. Perhaps he was contemplating whether the sacrifices he made was worth the progress they found in their journey. Maybe he was asking himself if it was worth becoming a criminal with a bounty on his head, or maybe he was asking himself if it was worth abandoning his family over it. The figure headed towards the room where the others were, hoping to get his mind off things. As soon as he opened the door, the figure was revealed to have a slim feminine body with long snow-white hair reaching all the way down his shoulders, with ocean blue eyes and a slightly tanned skin. He was no other than the famous, or rather infamous, criminal known as Nico Olivia, who was wanted for directly defying the world government's rules along with her comrades. As soon as she sat down, the others noticed her sad mood. So one of them asked her if she was alright. She simply smiled and said not to worry about, though her voice lacked any strength to prove it. Deciding it was not their personal business to interfere with, they decided to go back to there, though they all knew what was bothering the woman so much. But sadly she didn't like to talk about it, that's why they didn't push it too much. Unknown to the occupants of the small vessel, they were being observed carefully by ship that easily doubled them in size, and every half-hour report was sent to the leader of said vessel. He was easily bigger than most men, towering over any regular man 3 times over. He had a large orange bushy beard, and large arms. He wore standard marine clothes, although he always wore his coat over his shoulders. "Vice Admiral, sir, the scholars has not noticed us yet. What do we do, sir?" asked one marine. "For now, just try to approach them so we can arrest without any bloodshed," replied Vice Admiral Jaguar D. Saul, who was met with a, "Yes, sir." However, his marines weren't planning to carry out the orders that were just given from their superior. As the ship slowly made its way toward the smaller vessel, the marines stealthily loaded the cannons on board, and as soon the boat came into their view they fired multiple shots. Olivia was now in a better mood than before. She was working with her comrades on deciphering an old scripture that could possibly help them get closer to their goal. As soon as she leaned over to take a look, she suddenly heard a wheezing-like sound. Before her mind can even comprehend what was that, a loud boom filled her world to the brim, followed by another and another. "What the hell was that for?" thundered a very angry Saul. "What happened to arresting them with no bloodshed?" "Sir, we had no choice, they were resisting us," the marine tried to defend himself. "So you go and blow them up, a bunch of weaponless scholars. What happened to your training? Are that weak that you couldn't defend yourself against a bunch of scholars?" Saul reprimanded him. He was about to go on until a marine screamed, "There's a survivor. Bring him on board," the giant vice admiral ordered. This definitely wasn't Olivia's greatest day. One moment she was with her friends, the next she was with their corpses littered everywhere around the room. She tried to walk through the smoke and fire-filled room out to the deck. For all she knew, she was the last of them. The moment she stepped out of the room, she was greeted with multiple clicks of rifles. Wonderful, she is now arrested and was brought to the leader of the boat that attacked her. She wished it was pirates that attacked them, but to her despair it was the marines she knew here, and now that it was over for her, but she stood strong, not wavering even a little bit. She stood in front of Saul glaring at him, and she yelled angrily, "You killed them all." Saul was confused about such savagery and asked one question, "Are you truly interested in resurrecting the ancient weapons?" She merely scoffed at him, "You are all afraid of the past. We are scholars researching history. We have no interest in such weapons," she said. Saul didn't do anything except asking his men to take her down to the brig. However, he was deeply disturbed at how these people were killed so easily and without any reason. A few days has passed now. The ship that Luffy and his brother has sneaked on had finally docked for resupplying. They were awakened by the barrel they were hiding being lifted and tossed overboard to another sailor to place with the others. Groaning slightly at the rude wake-up call, Ace opened the lead, slowly checking the perimeter to make sure no one was there. When he deemed safe enough, he called for Luffy, but he didn't get any answer. Looking back, he found out that he was still in deep sleep. He then proceeded to do the most logical thing he can think of, punching him till he woke up. "OWW," screamed the little boy in pain. "What was that for?" "For being lazy," the older boy replied. "I mean seriously, we're just thrown in the air and that didn't wake you up." He finished, causing Luffy to pout. Ignored this, Luffy got out of the barrel with Ace. The moment he saw the town, his eyes sparkled with excitement. Before he can even move, his brother stopped him. "Can you wait till I ask people where are in the first place?" causing Luffy to look at him weirdly as if he just said the craziest thing. "What?" the boy asked. Nothing, Luffy replied quickly. "Okay," Ace said. He began to walk over the place searching for someone to ask him where he was, until an old man came and asked if he was lost. Playing the role of the lost child was risky since this may alert Garp, so he simply said he and his brother was just simply visiting the town and wanted to know what's its name, though in very awkward and forced way due to his lack of social skills whatsoever. He truly wished he used to listen to Sabo's lessons about manners. Yet he got the information that he wanted and he wasn't pleased a bit. Noticing his brother's full mood, Luffy came up to Ace and asked him, "Are you alright?" "This town is his." Ace began to speak, but the words froze in anger how his fate led him here. Hometown, the hometown of Gold Roger Loguetown. Luffy was about to scream about how awesome this was until Ace gave him a dark look and a scowl that shut him up. Deciding that staying like this won't help, he told Ace, "Let's go exploring, please." Giving a huff and regaining his calm, Ace began exploring the town with his overly excited brother jumping around everywhere like an imp. "Stop for a moment, will you, Luffy?" Ace said with a laugh. It was good seeing his brother return to his happy mood after Sabo's death, not that he lost it, but still he can sense the difference. As they traveled around, they finally got to the place where it is said the new pirate era began, the execution platform of the Pirate King. Seeing it, Luffy wasted no time climbing it to the top and he started screaming he was going to become Pirate King. Ace was gritting his teeth furiously shouting for Luffy to come down, before anyone came and caused them unwanted trouble. So he formulated a plan. He walked up behind Luffy on the platform, grabbed his arm and jumped down. As the Luffy's arm stretched, he pulled it down, taking Luffy with it, who was giggling awed around. Good, no one saw them. This is fun, let's do it again, Luffy cheered happily. Like hell no, this is too risky. Imagine if they called Gramps and he came and took us to that impelled down place. Ace scolded his younger brother, who looked down in shame. The rest of the day went on normally, with Luffy trying to buy any food he can get his hands and Ace preventing him from wasting their pirate fund, even though he did give in sometimes when he saw something too delicious to resist, though he skillfully stole them without anybody noticing him. Finally, they returned to the docks to sneak back onto the ship. However, Luffy felt something wrong. Ace, does the ship seem a little different than before? What? No, it is the same, Ace retorted. Grabbing his brother, he jumped into an empty barrel and closed it. And not a few moments passed until they were put in the ship. A random sailor came up to his friend. You are sure excited to see your family, aren't you, my friend? Said person smiled sheepishly and scratched his head. Well, you know, it has been a couple of months now. Honestly, I can't wait till I come back to the West Blue. Unknown to the boys, the ship that they came aboard had left hours ago while they were exploring the town. This ship was a different one, heading to the West Blue after a trading voyage in the East Blue. As that was happening, Saul's ship has finally reached Marine Ford. Marine Ford was a huge fortress-like building. It had many soldiers patrolling it on regular basis. It had huge training grounds where young Marines were training to be the future upholders of justice. Add to that, the base had huge walls that covered its entire perimeter, making it nearly impossible to enter it. As Saul entered the base, he ordered his men to take Olivia down to cells while they prepared her escort to impel down. The mirror of the place made everyone within a mile radius grow pale, for even Marines were taught to fear that dreadful place. Olivia, on the other hand, was simply staring down at the ground, not caring about anything. Only one thing was on her mind. She came out of her thoughts when a Marine shoved, causing her to trip a little bit. As she glared at him, she let out a sigh and started making hearing murmurs and whispers about how her and her colleagues were planning to awaken the ancient weapons and destroy the world. As Olivia was being taken away, a Marine soldier approached Saul and talked to him. Vice Admiral Saul, sir. This caused Saul to give him his attention. Fleet Admiral Sengoku has requested your presence, the Marine finished. Did he say why? Saul inquired. No sir, but he did say it was a matter of utmost importance, the Marine replied. Okay, you are dismissed, the giant Vice Admiral said, causing the Marine to salute and walk away. As he walked toward the man's office, he was wondering what he might request from him. Well, might as well tell him about those Marines' misconduct. He said to no one in particular, remembering how his troops attacked the scholar's ship when he specifically ordered them to capture them alive. After a while of walking in the long hallways of Marine Ford, he reached the Fleet Admiral's office. As soon as he entered, he was greeted by a sight that didn't sit too well with him. 4 other Vice Admirals were in the room as Sengoku waited for him. Saul, a pleasure, you finally made it, Sengoku said. The man was a rather tall individual wearing traditional Marine outfit with a Fleet Admiral coat. He had a large braided beard and always wore what seemed to be a seagull hat. The pleasure all mine, sir, the giant replied. I also wanted to talk, if you allow me to speak. The Fleet Admiral raised any eyebrow but nonetheless nodded. I would like to report an excessive use of power and insubordination by men in my platoon. This rang bells in Sengoku's mind. What happened? Well, I ordered the Marines working under my command to capture the scholar's ship you ordered us to follow, but they used excessive force and killed everyone on board except one, the giant explained. Breathing out a sigh, Sengoku began. That won't be a problem because I ordered them to kill the scholars. This statement didn't shock anyone but Saul himself, who was beyond flabbergasted. What? He bellowed, not caring that he was speaking to his superior, not that the other man minded it. He knew Saul's code of moral justice and getting mad at him would jeopardize the mission. Moving on, Saul, I requested your presence for a very important and secret mission. He paused a little then continued. I want you to man a ship that is heading toward the island of Ohara right now. For what, sir? Somehow Saul managed to regain his composure enough to ask the man. Sengoku replied with 2 words, Buster Call. Saul now gained a fresh coat of sweat and his eyes widened, fully knowing what this meant. He managed to breath out a simple question, why? The scholars of Ohara have been suspected of researching forbidden knowledge, so an investigation team is being sent there to check it out. If the rumors are true, then the island will be destroyed, Sengoku answered. Is this really necessary? I mean, what will happen to the people? And furthermore, sir, those are scholars, why kill them? We arrested plenty of scholars before, can't we do the same to Ohara's scholars? Saul argued, trying to avoid unnecessary loss of blood. No, these orders were given from the world government themselves. I expect to carry out this mission till the very end, Sengoku replied. I can't kill people like they are nothing. At least give me some proof that they are actually evil and I'll be the first person to kill. Saul, are you doubting the world government? They know what the best for the world is. I expect you to be ready by tomorrow morning. For now you are dismissed with the others, Sengoku said, waving his hand signaling them to leave. As the others began to walk out, Saul tried to argue with him some more in hope of changing his mind about how committing genocide won't help anyone, but… End of discussion, now leave. Sengoku said, leaving no room for any arguments. As Saul sat in his room, he can't just sit like this waiting to be involved in what can be only described as genocide. This internal battle went on for hours until he came to a decision to go ask the one person who can actually give him answers. Olivia was chained to a wall of her cell. She was tired, beat up, and heavily injured. The Marines didn't even bother to treat her wounds properly. At moments like these, one would think about their greatest regrets. Olivia wasn't any different. The only thought in her head was her daughter, whom she had left to join this expedition. Now, not only are her friends dead, but she will probably die from torture and impaled down without even seeing her daughter one last time. So absorbed in her thoughts, she barely heard the loud footsteps coming her direction. Leave was all Saul needed to say a poor Marine before the latter ran out of the room, seeing the giant vice admiral in a bad mood. Olivia finally acknowledging the man's presence, she gave him a disgusted look and hissed at him, "What do you want from me now?" Saul didn't falter. He expected this given he was responsible for the death of her friends, and said, "I just want to talk." Giving her no time to answer, "What were you doing out there?" She looked at him and sighed. Lying won't help her, so she might as well tell him, "We were searching for the leads on the details on the Void Century." Saul tilted his head in confusion. "What is that?" In a period of events that happened 800 years ago, Olivia began to explain what the Void Century was and how the world government outlawed it, and how the scholars of Ohara weren't interested in the least in recreating the ancient weapons. Finally, she asked him, "Why are you asking me all this?" Saul gulped a little, then began, "Your home island is being targeted by a buster call." As soon as his words sank in, Olivia's eyes widened in fear and anger. Fear for daughter and anger thinking that the victim mock. What happened next shocked her and caught her completely off guard. Saul, using all of his strength, stood in front of the woman's cell, grabbed the cell's doors and proceeded to rip them out of the walls. Once he reached the chained woman, he crushed her chains that were tying, leaving her wondering how her hands weren't broken. Olivia looked up to him and asked, "Have you lost it? What do you think you are doing?" "The right thing," he answered her. He then scooped her up, putting her on his shoulder, and began to run, taking out any poor soul that tried to oppose him, since the noise attracted the Marines. As he was running, a vice admiral tried to stop him. Luckily for him, he was able to take him out of commission by simply smacking both hands onto him like a clap, leaving him seriously injured. As he reached the docks, he stole 2 boats, putting the woman in one of them, and started sailing away with her. By the time sirens run, they were already far enough. "You know you will be deemed a traitor now," the woman pointed out. "Not an issue. I can't work for them because I already have too many doubts," Saul said. "For the record, I'm not thanking you," the woman calmly stated. "I didn't expect you to do that in the first place, and I do wish you luck on your mission. However, I am also going to that island of yours to avoid bloodshed that is destined to happen," he explained. "Then I suppose good luck to you too," she said as she sailed away. "You too," he quietly whispered before he blasted into a weird laughter-like sound. Der shi 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 shi. It only took 3 days for the ship that the boys sneaked onto to reach the West Blue. Their time on that ship wasn't as successful as the last one. Due to Luffy's eating habits and constant whining, the sailors sensed or thought they had a stowaway, so it was a huge game of cat and mouse where the brothers would try to hide among the ship's many spots in hope of avoiding the people who were searching for a possible stowaway. As the ship docked, the sailors emptied the barrels outside. Seeing their chance, the boys made a run for it. They waited until the sailor put down their barrel, checked that the coast was clear, exited the barrel, and made a mad dash toward the village that they just arrived at. The boys began to explore their new surroundings, unsure of what to do exactly. Should they head to the forest and build a treehouse there? Maybe they should stay at the village? There were sure many questions in their heads. They remained in such state until an elder man approached them. "Are you boys lost?" he asked, genially concerned for the boys. "Ah, what? No, we are just new here. We came with our grandpa," Ace lied. I see. Well, I hope you like it here. The West Blue is known as a rather peaceful place," the man said, and left, not seeing the shocked expressions he left behind. "Ace, did you hear him?" Luffy asked nervously. "Yeah, I did." A few moments of peace went. Then suddenly Ace punched Luffy. "OWW, what was that for?" the boy asked through the pain. "That's for not telling me we boarded the wrong ship," Ace reasoned. "But I did, don't you remember?" "No, you didn't," punching him another time, refusing to admit he was wrong. Great, he had to think of a way to go to the Grand Line. He walked through the village in hope of finding a way there. Meanwhile, Luffy sat on the side of the street holding a very bored expression, so he stood up and went back to the docks, not caring about any possible hear attacks he might give Ace. As he arrived, he watched in awe as sailors worked together to prepare the ship they arrived and set sail. It was only a few moments till a man walked up to him and said, "You like the view, don't you?" Luffy nodded before suddenly backing away from the stranger, who lifted his hands to calm the boy down. "Don't worry, I won't hurt." Luffy studied the man's expression before deciding he was a good person. "So are you lost, little guy?" the man said with a smile. Luffy shook his head and then said, "My brother and I came aboard that ship," pointing to the ship that was beginning to sail away. "But we wanted to go to the Grand Line, but we arrived here." The boy spilled his guts. The man bore a shocked expression, then laughed. "So you two were the rascals we're searching for?" This caused Luffy's fight or flight mode kick in before he can run. "Calm down, it won't help me doing anything to you now. We already docked and it's too late already." The man calmed him again. Suddenly, Luffy's stomach rumbled like a caged lion, causing the boy to blush and scratch his head. The man ushered him to follow him, so he did. After a couple of minutes they reached a small restaurant. The man cleared his throat. "Eat your fill, my little friend." Luffy smiled and dug in. After some time, Luffy stopped having been filled. The man looked at him wondering how such a small guy can eat so much. Then, his eyes noticed a small boy running around frantically. He guessed he was the boy's brother. So he walked up to him and asked, "Lost someone?" Said boy glared at him then said, "Yeah, a small boy with an old tattered straw hat." The man pointed his finger towards a direction. "You mean him?" Ace looked where the finger was pointed and saw a sleeping Luffy with a huge stomach. Feeling his anger raising, he ran and punched him yelling, "Do you have an idea how worried I was?" "Sorry, but I was bored so I went walking." He stopped lowering his head in shame. "But I found someone who can help us," he said, flashing Ace a toothy grin. "Who?" "Him." Ace looked and saw the man who helped him find Luffy. "So you can help us reach the Grand Line." The man stared at them before sighing and said, "Sorry boys. You are out of luck. This island isn't visited much by ships, so you will have to stay here till some of your parents come here." The boys paled. Luffy was about to panic before Ace stopped him. "Thanks, we'll wait," before grabbing Luffy and rushing off. "Ace, we can't wait, we didn't come all this way only." He was silenced with a fist to the head. "Don't worry, I have a plan," Ace stated. Luffy then saw they were at the docks in front of what looked like a small boat. During the time that Luffy went missing, Ace managed to find a small boat at docks during his search for his brother and stole it, deciding to use as their transport vessel to the Grand Line. "We are going to sail to the Grand Line," Ace said as he hopped in the boat. "Come on, hop in so we can go." Luffy did as brother told him since he knew better. As they sailed away, the man from earlier came and started shouting something that they couldn't hear. Ace couldn't care less and rode double time. Unknown to him, the man was trying to warn them about a coming storm and telling them to come. Sadly, they were too far out to hear him. It only took a few moments for Luffy to know what the man was trying to say as the sky darkened and the sea started to become turbulent. "Ace, we should go back. The weather is becoming seriously bad," Luffy said, scared. "No, forget it. We came this far, there is no turning back, and don't be a crybaby," Ace retorted. "I'm not," the boys shouted, causing a shouting match to break between them. As the boys were arguing, the weather became worse and the waves become harsher. Suddenly a huge wave managed to fling Ace off the boat. Luckily for him, he was wearing a life jacket he found on the boat. He shouted at Luffy, "Throw me the rope." Luffy then saw a coiled rope in the center of the boat and proceeded to throw it. Ace managed to grab it, but due to bad weather it became wet and damp, causing it to slip out Luffy's hands. "Ace!" Luffy shouted desperately. "Luffy!" Ace shouted back as the waves pulled them further apart from each other till he couldn't see him anymore. The next day, on an island near to where the boys have landed, a little girl exited what seemed like a huge tree, a happy smile on her face. That smile didn't last long though. As she began to walk through her village, the people around her began to murmur as they saw her, causing to double her effort to reach the forest shed, her destination. She sat down on a stump of a tree and proceeded to read a book she had. Unseen by her, 4 small figures were hiding among the shadows of the foliage and began to talk. "Look at her," a boy said. "She does look like a freak, even adults think that too," a girl this time stated. "She is always reading, what a creep," another boy exclaimed. "Let's beat her up," the last one said, holding a small rock. On shore near to her, a washed-up boat was being slowly pulled back into the sea. The sole occupant of the boat noticed this and came out of it quickly before he fell into the sand, only to stand up a few moments later. "That's nice, I'm still alive," he said with a laugh. He began to walk, unaware of the adventure waiting for him up ahead. The Straw Hat Boy and the Demon Child. The last thing that Luffy remembered was screaming out to his brother as the waves was pushing further apart. He knew there was nothing he could, so that's why he slowly sat down and hugged his knees as he began to cry as what seemed to be hours before he fell asleep. The boat that Luffy was on spent the entire night of that unfortunate day gently bobbing against the waves when the storm calmed down till the morning, until it finally washed up against an island. Hitting the land with a harsh thud was more than enough to jolt Luffy awake. The boy began to yawn as he stretched his limbs. Suddenly, he noticed the boat was moving backwards. Looking around, he saw the waves pulling the boat into the sea again. This caused him to go to the front of the boat and jump onto the sandy beach of the island. When he landed, he looked back and saw the boat was back again in the sea, surfing against the waves. Breathing a sigh of relief, he tried to walk. Try being the keyword here. As soon as he began walking, his feet gave away, causing to fell face down onto the sand. Moments later, Luffy managed to regain his strength and he stood up, sporting a huge toothy smile. "That's nice. I'm alive," he said as he began to walk into the distant investigating the new island he washed up on. However, a realization just hit him. "Ace," he said in a sad tone. He was about to begin panicking until he remembered Ace's promise to him that he won't die. Seemingly satisfied with his brother's promise, adding to that Ace was much stronger than he was. His mind told him that Ace was alright, probably got washed up on another island and is trying to find him so they can go to the Grand Line together. With that kind of logic, Luffy couldn't be worried anymore. He simply trusted his brother to be okay. As Luffy began to explore the island he was currently on, he noticed that it had a very huge forest just like the one on Dawn Island. What really stood out for him is that one tree he could see even through the forest. It seemed colossal and very huge. Even the tree in which their home resided on was tiny compared to it. He didn't know if it was his imagination, but if he squinted his eyes really hard he could even see windows on it, as if the tree was hollowed on the inside with people living in it. He continued exploring the island until he came across a bush of shrubbery. Pushing them aside he entered an opening inside the thick forest. His eyes began to scan the area until they fell on something, or rather someone. He saw a small dark-haired girl with sea blue eyes wearing an old tattered brown dress sitting on a stump in the middle of the opening reading a book she had. He noticed that she didn't notice him yet, so he decided to talk and maybe ask her where he was. "Hi there. Can help me and tell me where I am?" The girl, obviously surprised, jumped a little, and then looked in his direction. She simply quirked an eyebrow and started looking around. Clearly he wasn't talking to her. No one her age talks to her. She even looked up to the sky to make sure that he was actually talking to her. Seeing no one was around expect them, she finally looked at him thoroughly, and what she saw was a small boy wearing a rather old tattered straw hat, sporting a scar under his left eye with raven dark hair. She eventually gathered her courage and asked him, "Excuse me, but you are talking to me, aren't you?" she asked, confusing him. "Well, you are the only one here, aren't you?" Now it was his turn to look around. This caused the small girl to giggle a little bit, seeing how they were both confused. "No, I guess I am the only one here," she said. Unknown by the two children, the four kids from earlier were curiously watching them from behind the bushes, though they were looking evilly at the little girl. Luffy hummed a little. "So can you tell me where I am?" he asked her. "Of course, I'm sorry," she apologized, then continued. "This is Ohara, the House of Tree of Knowledge," she concluded, smiling a little at the end. "You mean that big tree over there?" he replied, though inwardly a bit insulted that he called the Tree of Knowledge that big tree. The girl nodded. Then the girl stuck out her hand and began to talk again. "Nice to meet you. My name is R.O. Ouch." The girl suddenly screamed as she felt something hard hit her forehead. "Stop right there, you freak. Don't you dare hurt him." The four children who were watching them burst out of the woods shouting at her, causing the girl to give them a hurt look for a fraction of a second before she assumed a blank look as began wiping off the blood that fell from her forehead as the kids began laughing at her. Meanwhile, Luffy was boiling with anger over how they hurt this little girl, though she didn't do anything to them or him for that matter. What drove him over the edge was the hurt look the girl gave, though brief it almost caused a blood vessel to pop. The final straw was when the girl began to wipe her blood. The children laughed at her. This finally caused him to snap. "What is wrong with you throwing a stone on her like that? She wasn't hurting me," he bellowed in anger, causing the children and the girl to look at him with confused looks. "Talk about ungrateful. We saved him from a monster, yet he is shouting at us," the girl of the bunch spoke. "What monster?" Luffy asked, clearly still angry. "That one." All the children pointed in one direction. Luffy looked where they were pointing, and saw the nice girl that helped him. "No, it can't be her," he reasoned. Then continued to look around, even looked at the sky, stretching his neck slightly, albeit the children didn't notice, but the girl did and her eyes widened. "What are talking about? There is no monster. Are you blind? It's right in front of you." The kid's patience was reaching its end clearly. Maybe they should leave him to meet his end. "I'm the monster," the girl stated emotionlessly. Looking at her, "No way, you are a girl and you are nice. You told me where I am." Luffy finished. Though not showing it, she was inwardly touched by the boy's kind words. "Yes, she is. She does those weird things with her hands," one of the boys said, clearly frustrated that someone was standing up to the so-called monster. "Hands? You are afraid of hands. You have hands just like her," Luffy retorted. "That's not what we meant," a boy with glasses this time spoke. This boy to them was as dumb as they get. "They mean I can do this." The girl spoke up, and suddenly a line of arms jolted from the ground till they met Luffy. Luffy only stared at them. The girl didn't care what he thought, she was used to that. The children were waiting patiently, wanting to know what he will say. "So what, that doesn't make you a monster?" The boy's words caused the girl to make a double on his words and look at him with wide eyes. The children were flabbergasted. Even after seeing it, he didn't think she was a monster. There was something definitely wrong with the world today. "In fact, this makes you awesome." The boy cheered as he began probing the arms and asking questions like a machine gun. "That's so awesome. How can you do that? Can you show? Can you do more than hands? How about eyes?" The girl clearly became uncomfortable with all the praise she was receiving. No one ever praised her like this. She came out of her thoughts as the final boy of the group screamed. "Have you lost it?" this makes her a monster. The straw-hatted boy stopped, stared at him for a little and made the girl wonder what he will say this time. He took a bad breath and began. You, pointing the girl, you look like a small piglet, said girl cried at hurtful name. And you, pointing this time at the boy with glasses, you look like a shiny egg with eyeglasses, who retorted with a, hey. You look like you are growing a bush over your head, pointing at the third boy who threw him a scowl. And finally you have horns on your head. Luffy finished as the boy who just called out gave him an angry look. Compared to her, you look like the monsters here. No were blasted. The girl was shocked that boy actually defended her. Hornhead made his way to Luffy grabbing his shirt before he said, who do you think you are to talk to us like that? Luffy smirked before pointing to himself. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, future Pirate King. This was meant laughter from the kids. The girl merely stared dumbfounded at him. He just talked to her like she was a normal person, defended her, called her bullies names, then to top it all he stated something so ridiculous with so much conviction. Who was he? Look at him. What an idiot. Piglet said, a freak and pirate wannabe. What a pair. Bushhead spoke. They truly deserve each other. Egghead chimed. Hornhead now came to Luffy, who didn't budge a bit, although the boy by all accounts was bigger than him. He stared at him, then shoved him, saying, you don't know what you are talking about. Get lost. Though the shove didn't cause Luffy to move, his hat fell off, causing the boy to go into panic as if he lost a limb of his. Running toward it, he picked it up, checked it for damage, put it on his head tightly as if to never lose it again. Ad turned to the boy who was laughing at what he did and said, you asked for it. All the eyes now were pointed at the straw-hatted boy who was now readying a fist. Then he began to rotate his arm in a circular motion. Gum gum. The boy stamped his foot on the ground, and then threw his fist forward as if he was pitching something only for it to stretch. Pistol. The fist flew straight at Hornhead, merely grazing his head, though it did cause him to fall. It then started to ricochet off trees before it finally went up in the air and landed on Luffy's head. Ouch. As the boy was rubbing his head, the others were dumbfounded as they watched the arm slither among the grass back to its place. The boy looked at them and said, what? The children all screamed, run for it, crying bloody murder all the way back from where they came from. As they left, the straw-hatted boy and the dark-haired girl were left alone. A soft breeze went by. That's when the girl broke the silence. Thanks you for standing up for me. The girl thanked him as she bowed, holding the book she had with her. No problem, I hate jerks like that, and you didn't anything for them to hurt you like that, Luffy said. Now the girl looked at him with curiosity in her eyes. How did you get your powers? Oh, yeah, I ate the gum-gum fruit, he said as he stretched his cheeks, so I became a rubber boy. Letting go of them as they slapped back into their place, making a rather painful sound, though it didn't bother a bit. Really, I ate a devil fruit too, the hana fruit, the girl explained. Both children started laughing as they thought how strange the odds are to meet someone else with a gift as weird as they have. The girl stepped forward as she put her hand on the air. My name Robin. Luffy took her hand and shook it. My name is Luffy and it is nice. A loud grumbling sound made its way to Robin's ears. She noticed it came from Luffy's stomach, and the boy started complaining, man, I'm so hungry I can't move. Robin looked with concern at him and she thought of something, but it was risky. Looking at Luffy again, she knew it was worth the risk, given that Luffy was the only kid her age who would speak to her, so she said, if you can stand, I can give you food. This had a simultaneous effect as Luffy jumped on his feet, smiling with a very large toothy grin. Really, thanks. The girl merely nodded, silently worried about the boy's mental health. As the two made their way back to Robin's house, the girl used her powers to check the coast is clear before entering. Seeing that no one else is in, she told Luffy to follow her. When they entered, Robin motioned to him to take a seat while she made him something to eat. Luffy did as he was told and sat patiently in a chair and waited for Robin to make him something. Robin crossed her arms over her chest, causing a multiple of hands to sprout out of everywhere. Each one of them grabbed something, from the bread to the knife to the jam, and finally started working. Luffy meanwhile was having a field day seeing Robin using her powers. They just seemed so cool. As soon she finished making Luffy a sandwich, her arms started shoving everything away, putting all the ingredients where they were in the first place. She walked to Luffy with his food and a plate and presented it to him. As he dove in, munching every last bit of the sandwich, Robin sat across him on the table and put a hand to her chin and asked, I presume aren't from here, are you, Luffy? What do you mean? The boy asked as took another mouthful of food. Well, I mean that most children my age are downright terrified of me, but you aren't, the girl answered him. Okay, no, I came to the West Blue with my brother, but we got separated during the storm yesterday, then I washed up on Ohara this morning, the boy explained. Wait, if you aren't from the West Blue, from where are you then? She inquired, ignoring the obvious issue being that Luffy's brother was lost. East Blue, wow, was the girl's only reply. Luffy and his brother came all the way from the East to West Blue. In her eyes, they were so brave to venture into the world like this. Then she shook her head a little when a question popped into her head. Why did they leave in the first place? You seem shocked. Is there a problem? He asked her, breaking her line of thoughts. No, but if you came from the East Blue, you must have crossed through the Grand Line, right? She told him. Luffy's eyes widened as the realization hit him. He sailed through the same sea that Gold Roger sailed through. He suddenly spat out his food and began to scream. This is so awesome. I sailed, humph. He was abruptly silenced by multiple arms sprouting from the chair and table closing his mouth. Hush, be quiet. Robin ordered with a sad look on her face. Luffy looked at her with sympathy in his eyes. What's wrong, Robin? It's just that no one can know I brought you here or that I fed you. She began explaining, my Aunt Roji hates me and she always hits me, barely feeds me, and gives me old tattered clothes. She finished as she pointed at her dress. Wow, kind of reminds me of Grandpa, the boy said, except the whole clothes thing. He gained a thoughtful expression. Then again, Makino is the one that usually bring me new clothes, so there's that, he finished. Your grandpa also hits you? Robin asked, kind of surprised since the boy was always smiling. She didn't imagine he was abused like her. Yeah, he always yelling at me, throwing me into the jungle alone, and every time I say I want to be a pirate he hits me, although I'm rubber so his hits shouldn't hurt me, but they do. He said as he rubbed his forehead as if to show her the pain he endured countless times. That's horrible, the girl said, but aren't pirates all a bunch of murderers and thieves? No, Shanks isn't like that. Luffy spoke up, defending his idol, taking Robin by surprise. You see, Shanks is one of the coolest pirates out there, even though I ate his devil fruit. Shocking Robin on that last bit of information, he was more worried about me not be able to swim than about it. She then noticed his face taking a form of guilt. One day, a mountain bandit attacked, so Shanks risked his life for me by fighting a sea king that almost eat me when the bandit took out me to the sea to escape from him. She was more than astonished by now. In the end he lost his arm for me. But then he helped me learn how true pirates act, that they only risk their lives for their friends. Luffy then proceeded to lower his straw hat, looking at it with a small grin on his face. Before he went away, he made promise to become the greatest pirate out there and gave his hat as a sign of our promise. He then broke a trademark toothy grin. That's why I am going to be the king of the pirates one day, he said, unaware of how angry Robin has become. How can you be so happy after all these things happened to you? She said, shocking Luffy enough to make him fall out of the chair. She couldn't get it. He was abused by Grandpa, almost ate by a sea king, and watched a man lose a hand, but he looked so happy. She had been abused since she was 2 years old, and for him to just come with this ridiculous amount of trauma and not care was mind-shattering. Luffy shrugged as he came off the floor, then said, well, I'm going to grow one day, so when I do I'll just simple stop them from happening, he said, flashing a toothy grin. Robin was filled with awe by this. Never in her life had she heard something so inspiring. So lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice Luffy come up to her and bring his face into hers. Hey Robin, want to go outside and play? Noticing the close proximity they were in, her cheeks reddened a little. However, she was beyond happy right now. He actually asked to play with her. This was a dream come true. As both kids exited the house through the back door, Luffy closed the distance between him and Robin, causing her cheeks to redden again. He looked her in the eyes, then poked her nose. Tag, you're it, he said as he ran, giggling all the way. Angry, she was caught off guard. She ran after him, though inwardly she was so happy right now. She always wanted to do this, but no one else wanted to play with her. She spent the rest of her day playing with Luffy till noon came, where she went to her home, though a bit worried about Luffy since he said he would sleep in the forest. Sleeping on Ohara was by all accounts was a pleasant change. Though it was a forest, the wildlife here wasn't as threatening as the ones back on Dawn Island. Luffy enjoyed his sleep very much that night, but come morning he was awakened by what seemed to be someone crying. As he opened his eyes and began to rub them, he noticed a small figure running his direction. As it got closer, he noticed it was Robin, and she seemed very distraught, so he ran over to her and asked, he feeling unexplainably worried for his new friend. Hey Robin, what's wrong? Why are you crying? What, Luffy, you're here. I didn't notice you, she said, quickly wiping her tears away. She didn't want to tell him in fear that she might scare him away, so she tried to play it off. No, there is nothing wrong. Why would you say that? But why are you crying? Did those bullies hurt you again? Do you want me to beat them up for you? Luffy asked, looking suddenly serious and totally different from his cheerful attitude. Though she was put off by the violence relating beating up part, she was actually quite flattered that he truly cared about. It was rather refreshing from her point of view. Trying to change the subject, she remembered something for their conversation yesterday. Wait Luffy, you said that you came with your brother yesterday, but where is he? Could he be still watching the boat they just came in? She reasoned, since was the only possible explanation. You mean Ace? Yeah, I don't know. I already told you we got separated by a storm the first day we came. Luffy said in such a causal, it almost made Robin feel he didn't care about his brother. How can you be so causal about this? He can be dead, you know, she told him in reprimanding tone. Luffy's eyes widened, then screamed, no, he can't be. He suddenly sat on the ground with a depressed look, causing the girl to feel worried. He promised that he won't die, not after what happened with Sabo, that he will always be there for me. Luffy finished as he sniffed a few tears that was threatening to fall. Robin was intrigued by this Sabo person. She wanted to ask Luffy about him if was he another sibling of his, but felt really bad for hurting Luffy's feelings. "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, Luffy. I can go away if you want," Robin told him with a sad tone, thinking she chased away the only person who would talk to her. He looked up at her as if she was crazy. "What? Why would I want that? You're my friend. Why would I want you to go?" he asked, genially confused why his new friend thought that he wanted her to go away as he stood up. Robin couldn't believe her ears. Did he just say that she is his friend? No one ever called her that. They only called her a monster or a freak. These 2 days were beginning to be the best days of her life. Inwardly she was making a wish she knew was a very selfish one. She was wishing whoever Luffy's brother was he won't find his way to Ohara so Luffy can stay here with her so she wouldn't be lonely all the time. "So what do you want to do, Luffy?" she asked in very excited and happy tone. Seeing that his friend was now in a better mood, "How about we play hide and seek?" he suggested. Nodding her head excitedly, they decided that Robin would count, for Luffy didn't know basic math. As she began searching, she looked everywhere in the forest, but couldn't find him. That's when she went to the beach only to find Luffy standing and staring at something. "Luffy, you're supposed to hide. Did you forget that?" she asked him, clearly annoyed that he wasn't even putting an effort into it. "I know, but look at that," he told her. Once she put her eyesight on the direction Luffy pointed at, she was also interested even though her face didn't show it. On beach, there was a giant man washed. He was wearing a worn-out clothes and a tattered cowboy hat. As they approached the figure, it suddenly rose up and roared at them only to receive 2 different reactions. The straw-hatted boy laughed his head off while the girl simply stared. Trying again to make the girl laugh, he roared once more only to receive the same result. He finally spoke. "At least someone is entertained." Then he promptly collapsed. "Wah, wah," he tried to speak. Both kids looked at each other confused and said at the same time, "Worms." After a few moments, Robin was finally able to understand that he wanted water. She directed him towards a running river to which he started drinking from greedily. He then fell onto his back on some trees using them as a pillow. "I'm alive, this is a miracle." He looked at the 2 children. He saw one of the children was a little boy who was beyond excited by seeing him, and the other was a little girl who wore a very impassive look on her face. "Does this place have town?" he asked them, not that he really cared, he wasn't going there in the first place. Robin nodded. "If you are waiting for something to happen, then you are going to be disappointed. I hurt my leg so I won't be able to do anything," he told them, disappointing Luffy a little. "Ah, but you are so cool. First time you both see a giant." He was met by yes from both of them in different tones. "Now, I need to ask you two to not tell anyone about me." Luffy, given the fact that he was planning to stay in the forest till Ace came, wasn't a problem unless someone came by him. Robin replied, "Okay, we won't tell anyone." She was unsure about Luffy. "Luffy, I want a favor from you." "What?" he asked her. "Promise me you won't tell anyone about him," she told him. "What? But, Luffy," she said in a scolding tone. "Fine, I promise I won't tell." She giggled a little as she achieved her goal. "See, we won't tell anyone." "That's too easy. You're children, you must be lying," he said. "No, I'm not. I won't tell anyone and so will he," Robin said, pointing to herself and Luffy. "I'm sure you're lying, you are children after all. The moment you go away from here you will tell everyone," the giant replied. "But I'm not that really interested in you," Robin stated plainly, only to be interjected by Luffy, who was over the moon. "How can't you be Robin? He's a giant," he finished, then looked towards the giant. Robin couldn't help but feel a little excited. Truly, Luffy was already beginning to rub on her. Then he asked him, "Can you poop?" Robin stiffened at this question, hoping that it won't cause the giant to get enraged. Her worries were all put to rest as the giant exploded into a weird form of laughter and crying, "Dershishishi." As the giant began, Luffy followed him, laughing in trademark laughter, "Shishishishi." Robin looked too and asked them, "What are you doing?" "We're laughing." Robin couldn't help it but began to laugh herself and told them, "Your laughs are very funny." The giant replied by saying that Robin's laugh was nice, causing a small blush to appear on her, and then Luffy agreed with him, causing it to deepen. "You're a funny little guy, aren't you?" the giant asked him as he finished laughing, looking over to the little boy. "Shi." Luffy laughed a little. "You're funny too." "You're a giant, so do you get into fights?" Luffy asked, excited about hearing stories from the giant. "What? No, not all giants are monsters like those from Elbaf. Don't put me in with those troublemakers, they're peaceful giant clans," the giant answered, disappointing Luffy a bit. "By the way, I guess I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Jaguar D. Saul," the giant introduced himself. Robin was shocked by his name. For her to meet 2Ds 2 days in a row was quite interesting, as if fate itself was trying to tell her something. "My name is Robin, and this is my friend Luffy," she said, only for her face to take a very displeased look. "Actually, he is my only friend." This caused Saul and Luffy to both look at her. "Don't worry, Robin, you'll make friends eventually," Luffy said, trying to put her mind at ease. "Why's that?" Saul asked only for a row of arms to sprout on his entire arm. Robin was shocked when Saul didn't yell at her and only said, "So you have a power, that's no reason not to have friends. I've been to the Grand Line and saw people with a lot of strong abilities." "Actually, we both have them," Robin said. Saul then looked at the boy who stretched his arm till he grabbed his beard and slingshot himself towards him only to land on his hat. This caused the two Ds to start laughing again. However, this stopped as they noticed Robin was still depressed a little, so Saul came up with an idea. "Come on Robin, laugh with us." The girl looked at him confused. "Laughing makes people feel good, doesn't it? That's why when you are hurt you must laugh," he reasoned. "But laughing when I am hurt makes me look stupid," she argued. "Come on Robin, at least try." Luffy chimed in this time. Not wanting to be left outside the fun, Robin began, "Dershishishi." "That's good Robin, do it some more," Saul said as he returned to laughing with children. For the next 4 days, Robin hung by Saul and Luffy even smuggled some food for them. Knowing the consequences of her actions, she opted to stay with them. The three would stay together talking, laughing, and the children would watch Saul build his raft. None of them was prepared for the craziness that was about to unfold on Saul's 5th day of arrival. Garp was confused. He remembered the call from Sengoku about Saul going AWOL. At first, he didn't believe him, but the moment he arrived at Marineford he finally had to admit it. The grounds was cracked, showing signs of a struggle, and the prison was ruined as one of the cells was bust open. To top it all, a vice admiral was heavily injured. He was supposed to go with Saul on a very important mission, whatever that was. He then left in a hurry, opting to follow Saul and get to the bottom of this. Sengoku tried to stop him, but he didn't care. Now he was on course to Ohara. He suspected that if Olivia and Saul were to meet, it would be on her home island. He tried to find a reason for Saul's actions, but none could come to his mind. Saul was model of justice, always there to do the right thing. And most important of all, he wasn't bloodthirsty as some Marines were. He would usually give suspects the benefit of a doubt, but for him to actually help a criminal escape, it was outrageous. He looked into the distance and saw his destination grow closer. He was nearing Ohara Island. He told his men his orders. "Men, as you know from recent events, one of our own went AWOL helping a criminal escape. That person is Vice Admiral Jaguar D. Saul." He was interrupted by murmurs from his men. One death-promising stare was enough to shut them down. "As I was saying," he cleared his throat and continued, "Saul helped a criminal escape from our custody. I guess I don't need to give introductions about her, but for who doesn't know, she is Nico Olivia." The men's eyes went wide as they registered this new information. "Your orders are simple. If you were to see any of them, you are to arrest them and I will take it over from there." He finished as the lookouts told him that they arrived at Ohara. Telling them to dock, he looked over to the Tree of Knowledge and mentally said to himself that if someone were to know about Olivia or even Saul, it would be the scholars of Ohara. Now Robin was currently taking Luffy to meet the scholars. Albeit both were reluctant. Luffy was afraid that his brother would come and won't find him, so he will leave. Robin was afraid that the scholars was going to tell the Marines about Luffy and they will take him back to his family, leaving her alone again. In the last days, the scholars noticed that Robin was spending more time out. They began to worry that the incident that happened when she received her scholar certificate has caused the girl to enclose on herself and shun them out, making her truly lonely. When they finally confronted her, she began dodging questions which didn't ease the scholars' worries, but this only helped raise more red flags as a new issue aroused, being what she was hiding. When lead scholar Clover told Robin to confess, she finally broke and told them about Luffy and his story, and that she was spending time playing with him, opting to leave Saul out. The scholars were happy that Robin found a friend, but weren't too pleased with the notion that he was sleeping in the forest, so they asked her to bring him here. She agreed very reluctantly. As they approached the Tree of Knowledge, Luffy asked, "Is this really necessary? I mean, my brother and I always slept in the forest before we went sailing." This little remark caused Robin to feel more worried about her friend. "Yes, the scholars want to know you and give a place to live, until your brother or your family comes and takes you back home," she said, though a bit sad at the end. As she reached the door, she knocked. The door was opened by a man whose hair was styled in such a fashion it looked like cloverleaf. This caught Luffy's attention quickly. "Robin, you're back. Did you bring your friend with you?" said man asked the girl kindly. "Yes, Professor Clover," Robin replied. "Good," he told her, and then averted his attention to Luffy. "Luffy, I presume? My name is Clover." "Nice to meet you," Luffy said as he shook the old man's hand. "Robin told me you're from the East Blue, right?" the boy replied by saying yes. "Why did you come to West Blue?" the old man asked him. "To escape from our grandpa," was the boy's reply. Clover then asked him why. "Well, he wants us to be Marines, and we want to be pirates, so we ran away." Then Luffy suddenly asked a question that made a couple of the scholars to start laughing in the background. "Why does your hair look like a leaf?" This caused Clover to blink a little. Robin gasped, fearing that Clover might be offended and kick Luffy out. She was surprised when the man just laughed and said, "I like it this way." The old man started to scan the little boy, then he saw something that intrigued him. "Now, how did you get this scar under your eye?" The old man inquired, though wondering how the conversation took such a weird turn suddenly. "You mean this?" Luffy said as he pointed to his scar. "I stabbed myself to prove to Shanks that I'm strong so he can take with him, but it didn't work," Luffy explained. The scholars and Robin were shocked to know that this wound was self-inflicted by the boy himself. Robin stepped forward and asked him, "Did it hurt you?" "Yeah, just a little, but I've been through worse." This caused the scholars to raise an eyebrow and Robin innocently asked, "Like what?" "Let me think a little," as he put a hand to his chin, but suddenly his face turned red. Concerned Clover asked if he was okay. "Teeth thinking hurts," the boy told him as he rubbed his head. All the scholars now were interested in Robin's friend since he was clearly out of place and had quite the character on him. No wonder Robin liked being around him. He seemed like a social butterfly. Finally he remembered something. "Yeah, I remember. One time Gramps tied a bunch of balloons and sent me flying. When I came back down, Makino said I broke all my ribs and a hand too." The boy finished, causing the scholars to pale at the story and Robin to tear up a little for her friend. "Why did he do that to you?" Robin asked him as tears threatened to fall. "He said he wanted to train me to become a strong Marine." The scholars were truly disturbed by this account. No wonder the boy and his brother ran away. "Did anything else happen to Luffy?" Clover asked, concerned for the boy's health. He was planning to tell the Marines, but maybe the boy would be better off if he stayed here with them. Add to that, Robin seemed to enjoy his presence. Luffy hummed for a bit. "Well, Makino said that he set me to fight trained fighting monkeys as soon as I began to walk. One time he threw into a pit full of tigers, another into a bottomless pit. Oh yeah, he also threw into the jungle alone for 4 days before I found my way back home." As he went on recalling the training his grandpa has out him through, Robin was visibly trembling at the idea of sending him back. If she didn't know any better, she could say his grandpa was actively trying to kill him. A knock on the door brought out them of their talk. Clover went to the door wondering how did this 7-year manage to survive all that training his grandpa put him through. He was very strong for his age, if anything. He opened the door with a smile and said, "I'm Clover. Welcome to the Tree of Knowledge. How can I?" His eyes were greeted to a less than a pleasant sight. The hero of the Marines, Garp, with right-hand man, stood in front of him with Marines entering and 2 remaining outside. "Help you? May I come in?" Clover wanted to say no, but this would raise suspicion, so he nodded. As Luffy looked at the newcomer, he greeted him causally, "Hi, Gramps." Then a few seconds later, his senses told him something was wrong until he finally processed what he saw and said, so he began to trying to escape. Garp replied as casually as Luffy, "Hi Luffy, when did you get?" Garp mind stopped a little processing what he saw. Luffy was here. No way. Blinking and wiping his eyes, the same straw hat, same shirt with anchor on it, and same scar was all there. Yup, that was his grandson alright. He calmly said, "Luffy, how are you here?" Luffy glanced in fear as his attempt to escape failed when tried to run to a window and jump from it so he can avoid detection. Steeling himself, he began. "Ace and I escaped from Dawn Island after you left. We tried to find a way to the Grand Line, but we ended here in the West Blue." "Okay. Where is Ace then?" Garp asked as calmly as possible, although the vein on his forehead told a different story. "We got separated by a storm. I don't know." The scholars could hardly think as they were worried for their own lives, and one thought on their head: did they find out about us? At the same time, the situation between the 2 siblings was tense. Not a moment passed, as Garp finally gave into his rage and punched Luffy so hard he cracked the floor a little and yelled at him, "Are you insane? You could have died." "Well, you threatened to take us to that impelled down place, so we didn't have a choice," the boy replied as he rubbed his forehead to ease the pain a little. The scholars all went white as they heard what Luffy said, and looked at Garp as if he was insane or out of his mind. Garp, noticing the bewildered looks he was receiving, quickly defended himself. "No, wait, it's not what you are thinking. It was just part of my plan to make him into a Marine. I threatened him with jail or Marine Ford. He'll beg me to be a Marine in case I kept on his home island." Garp explained the truth of the situation. Some of the scholars were mind blown while others face-blamed on the craziness of his plan. True, Garp might be the hero of the Marines, but thinking wasn't his forte. Garp was left angry and embarrassed as he was put in a very weird situation. His right hand Bogart was merely shaking his head at how things have escalated so quickly into such an awkward situation. Garp then shifted his attention to the reason of his current predicament, aka Luffy. Luffy, he was about to punch him when Clover interjected. "Mr. Garp, I respect your relation with your family, but I must insist that you refrain from hurting anyone here due to the possible damage you might cause to the books here." Garp looked around and saw how tense the situation has become. So much for a smooth and subtle. He needed to find a way to ease the atmosphere so he can begin investigating. Luffy, he then saw a small girl run to Luffy and ask him if he was okay. Seeing his chance, he assumed a more friendly tone. "So Luffy, I guess I can see why you came here after all. Hunting girlfriends, aren't you?" he said with a cheeky smile. The effect was immediate as both children's faces reddened considerably. Robin took to lower her head to hide her face, while Luffy denied the accusation. Now, go play along with your friend, while I have a word with the scholars," he said as he ushered him toward the door. Robin followed suit when Clover told her to go with the boy. "Oh, and Luffy, when I'm finished here, we are going to have a serious talk," Garp said ominously as Luffy gulped in fear as he went outside. Now, given that the introductions were clearly thrown outside of the window, I have one question. What do you all know about Nico Olivia? Garp spoke sternly. When the woman's name was mentioned, the scholars, especially Clover, all started to sweat bullets. As the children went outside, Luffy was considerably boomed out by the turn of events. Robin tried to comfort him, but nothing worked. She was also sad knowing that when Garp leaves, so will Luffy. Well, at least he doesn't have worry about going to prison anymore, he thought. As they reached the forest, they went to the beach where Saul was still working on his raft. When they came out of the forest, they were on a hill. Robin began calling out for Saul. Finally, her eyes caught what they're looking for. She saw Saul tying knots on his raft. He then came towards them and said, "So what do you think, kids? Pretty nice, huh?" When he received no answer, he looked over to them closely and saw that both were sad. "What's with the long faces?" he asked him. "Nothing, my grandpa came and I'm sure he wants to take me with him," Luffy replied, first followed by Robin, "and you're both going away, so I'll be alone again." "Well, that's a problem, but why don't you go with him, Robin?" Saul tried to offer a solution. Though she was captivated by the idea, she shook her head. "My mom is at the sea, so I'm waiting for her so I can go with her next time." I see." He looked over at Luffy. "Why are you sad, Luffy? Shouldn't you be happy you're going home?" "No, I'm not," Luffy said. "His grandpa is really mean, Saul," Robin said, seeing firsthand how violent Garp was. "Plus he wants me to be a marine, but I want to be a pirate," Luffy added. Saul wanted to tell them about how the Marines were good, but remembering recent events, he wasn't so sure himself. Now, he was currently on a mission to reach Ohara to prevent the attack. Thousands of lives depended on it. In summary, it was a life or death mission. He pushed this to the back of his mind, trying to find a way to cheer the kids up a little. "Come on. Remember what I told you about laughing when you're sad." Both children started laughing, though it didn't do anything to cheer them up. Noticing this, Saul looked Luffy in the eyes and told him, "Why don't you stand up to him, Luffy? Tell that you don't want to be a marine. Fight for what you believe in." Luffy looked up at him, not convinced. "I don't know about that. Gramps is a really strong and is also hell-bent on making me one. He wants me to be like him. I mean, I want to be free, not tied down taking orders from everyone." Robin couldn't agree more with him, remembering how the scholars prevented her from joining their research, something she really wanted to do. She didn't study that hard and pass an archaeology test with flying colors only to be left out and shunned by them. It was unfair. This new information caused Saul's eyes to widen. A marine here? This could jeopardize everything he's trying to do. Then a small voice in his head told him that he might be able to help him avoid the oncoming massacre. It was worth the shot. "Luffy, what's your grandpa's name?" Saul suddenly asked him out of the blue. "I don't really know," the boy said, confused why that would matter. "I think Professor Clover called Garp, right?" Robin stated. Suddenly the hill the children were on shook as Saul slammed his fists on it. "Garp, as in Monkey D. Garp the Vice Admiral," Saul exclaimed, breathless. The children were shaken by Saul's change of attitude, but managed to nod their heads. Saul stood there. This is what he needs to save Ohara. If he can manage to bring Garp to his side, given his history with Sengoku, Ohara will be saved from destruction. Looking back to the children, "Listen, kids, I want you." He stopped, noticing how they were frightened by his outburst. Taking a deep breath and letting it out, he started again. "I'm sorry I scared you guys, but it is very important that I talk to your grandpa now, Luffy." Luffy nodded his head in understanding, and Robin said, "It's all right. We know you won't hurt us." They trusted Saul, but the way he acted was truly terrifying. As the children turned to head back to the library, Saul stopped them. "Wait. I need to tell something very important to tell Garp when you see him, so come closer." The children went over to him to hear what he had to say. Meanwhile, on the distance, a small rowboat could be seen coming closer to Ohara. The sole occupant was currently praying, "Please, let me make it on time." At the same time, a large marine ship was making its way to the west side of Ohara. A man on its deck was smiling menacingly and had devilish look in his eyes. Finally, the world will witness the power of the world government. He then looked at something in his pocket and started to chuckle darkly. "And know who their masters are," he said as he looked towards Ohara. Luffy and Robin were currently heading towards the Tree of Knowledge to talk to his grandpa and tell him to meet Saul on the beach south of the island. Ever since they left, however, Robin was a bit jumpy. She couldn't exactly tell why, but that phrase Saul told them gave her goosebumps. "What's wrong, Robin? You've been nervous all our way back," the straw-hatted boy asked, concerned for her. "I don't know why, Luffy, but that phrase Saul told us. I'm sure I saw it somewhere. I just can't tell where, and it's giving me a really ominous feeling," she replied. She knew she read about it somewhere, but her mind was currently preoccupied with fulfilling their mission. Finally, they came out of the forest and began to run through Robin's village. Luffy couldn't help but notice for the first time the wired looks that Robin was receiving. It was like she was an outcast or some sort of abomination that the villagers tried to avoid at all costs. He wanted to ask her why were they looking at her like this, but he pushed it for later as they finally reached the Tree of Knowledge. As they tried to enter the tree, the two Marines who Garp positioned prevented them and told them that Garp ordered them not to allow anyone to enter under any circumstances. Naturally, Luffy was enraged and started yelling, "Get out of our way. We're in a hurry. I need to talk to Grandpa right now. It's very important, so move will you?" The boy finished moving his hands to emphasize how important it is. "Yeah, a friend of ours told us something very important and told just to tell Garp personally. So can you please move?" Robin asked politely in hope of winning over the Marines and for them to allow her and Luffy to enter the tree. "Sorry, Luffy, but it is still a no. How about you both tell us what you have to say, and when Vice Admiral Garp is finished we'll tell him." "Sounds good," one of the Marines told them, hoping for them to stop hounding him. It was already hard enough to stand still like a statue without two children annoying you. "No, I need to talk to Gramps right now. It just can't wait," Luffy replied furiously. He was about to start punching his way through till Robin pulled him aside.
"Forget it, Luffy. They won't allow us to pass through. We failed Saul," Robin said in disappointed voice as she lowered her head.
"No, we didn't fail him. There are still ways to enter," Luffy said as he took a thinking position on the ground. He put his hand to his chin and started stroking it. It didn't take long for his face to turn red from stress. "Luffy, stop. You are exerting yourself thinking," Robin told her friend, though she never expected to tell someone that. It felt wired. Then, as if a light bulb appeared over Luffy's head, he had an idea. He ran over to Robin and whispered it to her. "We can't do that, Luffy. We get in trouble." Robin chastised him for such an idea. "Well, it is our only way in, so there's no other choice," Luffy reasoned. Robin bit her lip a little, then nodded her head in acceptance of Luffy's plan. She didn't want to fail Saul, so she'd do anything for her friend. After all, what's a friend for if he can't help in the time of need? Both children went back to where the Marines were standing. As they approached them, Robin silently said, "I hope this works." Hearing this, Luffy grabbed her hand, causing her to blush a little, and squeezed it a little as if to reassure he is here, and told her with determination in his voice, "Of course it will. We'll doing together."
"Mr. Garp, I can confidently tell you that no one by that name has ever passed or entered the library."
Clover lied through his teeth, hoping to trick the Vice Admiral and make him leave. For the last half hour, Garp has been interrogating the scholars about Olivia, mostly Clover, but they were putting a tough front, denying any knowledge of her. However, Clover wasn't sure how much longer they can last before they break, or before Garp patience finally runs out due to this charade, for patience isn't something he is known for. True to his reputation, Garp was increasingly growing frustrated with this game the scholars were putting him through. But time was on his side. He can see that their front was slowing, collapsing on itself. All he needed now was poking in the right direction, ask a couple of questions here and there, and the scholars will spill their guts out. Before he can proceed, a noise from outside grabbed his attention, and everyone else for that matter. It sounded like the guards he placed were arguing with someone, but he couldn't tell who. A few moments. Silence returned to the outside, only to be broken mere seconds later by two children demanding entry. "Come, let me in. I really need to talk to Grandpa." A small boy's voice can be clearly heard, who Garp recognized immediately. "Please, let us in. It's very important that we talk to Mr. Garp now." This time a girl's voice came through, who Garp assumed was the little girl he saw from earlier. When the children were rejected entry, two audible kicks were heard, followed by an "ouch." Not a moment passed, when two children bursted into the library. "Grandpa, I really need to talk to you right now," Luffy told his grandpa, who suddenly felt a wave of awkwardness wash over him. A slap to the forehead was all Garp can muster. Really, first he finds his grandsons has fled their home. Then the scholars were playing a game of cat and mouse with him, and to add cherry on the top, his grandson and his friend just kicked there through his men demanding to talk to him. Really, he was getting too old for this. Before his grandson can speak, Garp beat him to it. "What the hell, Luffy? Can't you see I'm in the middle of working here? Couldn't you have waited for a bit longer?" Before turning his attention to the two that the kids bypass, "And you too, when we go back to Marineford. I personally supervising your training, since clearly you weren't having any if a little girl can kick her way through both of you." He finished, causing the two who were rubbing their shins to quiver in fear. "Robin," Clover whispered to her, "what's so important that you had to kick your way through to Marines to talk to Garp?" Looking at the old man, Robin told him, "You see, Professor, Luffy and I went to the beach to see a friend of ours. But when we told him who Luffy's grandpa was, he told us that he needs to talk him in." The girl stopped abruptly in the middle of her sentence, grabbing everyone's attention, especially Garp. "Told us to tell him a single phrase." "What is that phrase?" Garp asked as his interest was quibbed by the serious face the girl was showing along with his grandson. He only showed that face if he made a promise, which meant whatever it was for them, it must been very important to make there through his men. Both children took a deep breath and said in the same time, "Buster Call." All the adults in the room almost blacked out from fear, and an eerie silence stretched for a couple of seconds, making the kids feel uncomfortable before Clover broke the ice. "Robin, where did you hear those words?" Clover asked sternly. The girl, not seeing this side of the elder scholar before, even when he was scolding her for spying on them, became increasingly nervous. "Hey, stop, you're scaring Robin, and what's up with your faces all white all of a sudden?" The boy asked, confused why everyone was suddenly this scared. "Be quiet, this is none of your concern right now," the man spoke up. "Of course it's my concern. You're scaring Robin more than she already was," the boy replied furiously. Hearing this, the old man looked to the little girl and saw that she was completely terrified. Collecting his nerves, he let go of her, and when he was about to ask her how she heard this phrase more calmly, Garp stepped forward and said, "Maybe, I should handle it from here." Clover then stood up and opened his arms. "Never in a million years will I allow to come near her." The old man protected the girl. He saw how Garp treated his own kin. He wasn't foolish to let him near Robin. A gentle tug to his clothes brought his attention to Odecting. He saw Robin was wearing a very serious expression now, though still nervous. "No, Professor, I really need to talk him," the girl spoke sternly. He was about to refuse, but the look Robin gave him told him she was not backing down. Slowly lowering his arms, he allowed Garp to pass him. As Garp approached the girl with grandson standing beside her, he saw the looks he was receiving, and message was loud and clear: "Don't even think about hurting her or else." He needed to treat this situation as delicately as possible, or who knows what could happen. Sitting in front of them, he began to speak. "You're Luffy's friend, right?" The two kids nodded. "Then I trust you like he does." The man finished, cracking a huge smile that rivaled Luffy's smile in an attempt to create a calm atmosphere to help the children relax more. This side of Garp helped Robin calm down a little as she collected her thoughts on what to say to him. "Now back to business. You said a friend of yours told you that phrase, right?" The children nodded. "Can you tell who he is?" Garp asked, hoping he can finally get some answers. Well, Robin knew Saul told them they can tell Garp about him since he needed to talk him, but she was still uncomfortable about that, so Luffy answered when he sensed her hesitation, "Saul, grandpa." Upon receiving this information, his eyes widened and he asked as slowly and calmly as possible to not cause unseen damages if he flipped his top off. "Saul, as in Jaguar D. Saul." He was met by a yes from the children. "Well, thanks for the information, Luffy and," Garp said. "Robin," the girl answered his unheard question. "Right, Robin. Now just one more thing. Where can I see him?" Garp asked. "South of the island," Robin answered him. "All right, I shall be on my way now." Garp told his men. "All of you protect the library in my absence, and as for you," he said, looking the Marines who allowed the children to get by them, "no one is allowed to enter without my permission, especially children. Bogard, stay with these two." Said individuals lowered their heads in shame. "Furthermore, no officer enters this place under any circumstances. Am I clear?" He was met by a chorus of, "Yes, sir." "Wait," Clover suddenly spoke, "I need to come with you. I have my own questions he needs to answer about." The man bit his lip before he continued, "Olivia." "Mommy," Robin said in very quiet voice, but Luffy managed to hear her. Finally decided to end this game of cat and mouse, I see?" Garp asked sarcastically. "Clover, wait, there has to be another way." An archaeologist spoke only to be shut by Clover. "There's no other way. You heard what the children said. It is better we come clean now before who knows what might happen." Clover spoke, silencing any remaining opposition. "Grandpa, can I come with you?" Luffy asked in hope of an adventure with his gramps. Sure, the man was a nutcase for a lack of a better term, but he knew how to have fun. "What? No, you stay here with my Marines. They will protect you and Robin," Garp replied. "But I don't want to. Libraries are really boring," the boy whined, though he didn't offend the scholars whom from hearing his stories deduced that he was more of an outdoor person rather than an indoor one. He did manage to offend Robin, who let it slide this time. "Oh, for the love, okay. Luffy, listen to me. I need to stay here and protect Robin," he said, trying to play on his grandson's protective nature of his friends. "Okay, I'll protect her with my life," the boy said, causing the girl who was nearby to blush. Clover then came up to Robin and told her, "Stay here, Robin. The Marines will keep you safe." He was met by a yes. "Now come on, let's start moving." Garp spoke loudly. He then exited the door, followed by Clover. A couple of moments passed without anyone speaking until Luffy broke the ice. "Man, this is boring." This remark caused to hear a huff of annoyance from no other than Robin. "Oi, Robin, what's wrong?" he asked, clueless as if he didn't insult her in her point of view. "I'm not talking to you," the girl informed him. "Why?" The boy panicked. "You said libraries are boring. I like libraries." But he was met by another huff and the girl turning her back to him. "Come on, Robin, don't be like that." He was met by silence from her. Robin, again silence was all he received. As this comedy skit was going on, the scholars and Marine alike were laughing pretty hard. "I can already see who's wearing the pants in this relationship," one Marine said to a scholar, who replied with a laugh, "She's already controlling his every action." Those two, upon recognizing to whom were they talking, returned to the silent treatment and glaring at each other, though they wondered how such a scene eased the tension in the room considerably. Finally, after a couple of rounds, Luffy felt defeated and began apologizing. "I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, Robin." The girl acknowledged him by turning her head and said in a scolding tone, "You promise you won't say libraries are boring?" "I do," he said, not wanting to be ignored by her. "Good, now come on, let's read some books," she said, grabbing his hand, and replied with a very weak, "Hooray," with all the resolve he can muster. Though she saw through, she still appreciated he was putting an effort into it. "I'm sure there are some books about Gold Roger somewhere," she said, perking Luffy's interest as he took the lead, excited about his hero. The children began a race for leadership. The Marines didn't care too much what the children did as long as they were in the library. The scholars were beyond then happy that Robin was doing her favorite pastime with her friend, though they secretly prayed no one near the basement. On the east side of the island, the small rowboat finally came to a halt as it hit the shore. Olivia came out of it looking around. She was still in awe. Yes, this is Ohara. She couldn't believe her eyes. She finally made it back home. She could have went on marveling on the beauty of her home island, but she had a mission to finish, even if it was coupled with her demise. She began to trek through the forest in order to go to the Tree of Knowledge to warn the scholars about what was going to happen. Deep down in herself, she wished Saul had actually made it and warned everyone. She wished that when she reaches the village, it would be empty due to the villagers evacuating. She began reminiscing on the last 6 years of her life. She went on this expedition after her husband's death in order to fulfill his dreams. She somehow managed to get a bounty on her head, and then was forced to watch her colleagues all die in front of her eyes. And just to add a cherry on the top, a vice admiral went AWOL because of her. To say that those 6 years were eventful would be understatement of the century. But the regret she held the most was abandoning her daughter. She can still remember her face as she left on the boat, crying out for her not to leave her alone. Even now it still tore her heart thinking about it. She wondered how much old her daughter had become. 6. No, she must be 8 years old now. She began to think, will her daughter accept her back? No, she said to herself. Even if her daughter accepted her back, she deserves someone better than a criminal to be her mother. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the island, the marine ship made its way to the port. The man from earlier came out of his room. He was wearing a green vest with a black coat above it. He had a pale white skin due to the lack of exposure to sun and wore a very evil look in his eyes. "Sapdine, sir, we docked on Ohara. What are your orders?" one of his men asked. Sapdine came down from his ship. He looked around, he saw his men saluting him, and he liked it. He loved people saluting him, worshipping him, and making his every command come true like a god. He wasn't known to be the best of soldiers. Actually, he wasn't known for his strength or capabilities whatsoever. He rather known for his corruption as he made his way to his current position he held through kissing up, scheming to come with me. Your mission is to protect me at all costs. No person is to come in 5 feet of me, got that? He said to 2 men who were known to the strongest of their comrades. The rest of you go to the Tree of Knowledge and search it for any possible evidence. He said, though he didn't care so much, he was planning to destroy this island just for the heck of it. This was his ticket for heroism. He will be known as the hero that destroyed the demons of Ohara who were plotting to destroy the world. He can already imagine it, people cheering for him, calling out his name. It was nice. This will truly make his reputation fly high sky. It what mattered after all. And the best thing of this all, he can do without even worrying about anyone finding out. Who can stop him anyway? He was supported by the world government, so that meant he can commit any heinous act and no one will dare to defy him. He only hoped his son will do him proud when he hands him the title. "So what's your relation to Olivia?" Garp asked Clover as both men walked through the forest to see Saul. Breathing out a sigh of defeat, Olivia was one of the scholars of this island. In fact, she was one of the best, Clover said. Then he carried on. "That's why we sent her to lead the expedition that your Marines encountered lately. However, she made it clear that she's going to cut all ties with us in case anything goes wrong." While Garp raised an eyebrow regarding the other scholars' part, since he didn't know that there were any on the boat except Olivia. But he did know why she wanted to cut all ties. "Let me guess, she wanted cut all ties in case she became a criminal, right? You do know why an archaeologist becomes a criminal?" True, Clover knew, and the reason was the poneglyphs. They're indestructible stones that contained an ancient language chiseled into its sides. It is told that they contain the events of 100 years that happened about 800 years ago, which still unknown. Most people who study these 100 years call it the Void Century. 800 years ago, the world government, hoping to keep the secrets of the Void Century hidden, issued a law that forbade studying them. Any individual caught trying to analyze them was met by swift death. However, even though with the huge risks, a lot of people and scholars couldn't help themselves as they tried to learn its secrets. Those always met the same fate, which was death. "There's still one thing I can't warp my head around. Why go through all the trouble to protect if she asked to cut all ties with her?" Garp asked, eager to receive the answers he was waiting for. Clover knew what he was going to say will seal the fate of the scholars, but it was already late to back down. "We have a poneglyph ourselves hidden under the tree." We're analyzing it for last 6 years. The man finally spoke, dropping a huge bombshell. Garp was shocked. He didn't expect that. I see, it makes sense now. Garp was able to fill this jigsaw puzzle. When the children mentioned the Buster call, Clover stopped as a shiver traveled through his body. I knew it was the time to admit everything. Though the scholar's fates and I are sealed, I want to avoid unnecessary bloodshed that the government might want to cause. But if you truly wanted that, why study them in the first place? Why risk it? Garp asked. History is for the people. It's their right to learn what have happened. Clover exclaimed angrily, then he calmed down and said, "That's why I am glad I am speaking to you, Garp." Quirking his eyebrow, Garp told him, "You are fully aware that I can simply just phone the fleet admiral and they will Buster call this island due to your admission alone, right? True as that may be, you are still better than some of those unsavory fellows who worship bloodshed more than anything else in the name of justice. To be honest, I'm glad it is the Marines are being sent into this case and not anyone else. At least you can be reasoned with, unlike the world government." Clover explained. Garp couldn't agree more with him. He knew who corrupt the government was. That's why he never became an admiral. Furthermore, he knew what Clover meant by saying, "who worship bloodshed." It was the followers of absolute justice, a twisted version of justice that justified killing countless innocent people in the name of protecting the world. The more he thought it about, the more he came to believe that pirates are becoming the good guys these days. Maybe Luffy should become a pirate, he thought, before a voice came in and said he will be a great Marine. He came out of his thoughts as he reached his destination. He was greeted by Beach of Ohara, which was housing a large giant. "Garp," Saul greeted him. Garp merely looked at him with a sharp glare and said, "Saul, you have some explaining to do, so skip the pleasantries and get to it." Meanwhile, in the library, Robin was sitting and reading one of her favorite books. Truly, to her, the power of knowledge was priceless. She came out of her trance as she heard a loud snore coming from the table across her. She looked at the source and saw that Luffy was sound asleep for the 5th time in 15 minutes. It was astounding how he can sleep when he was reading a good book. Robin couldn't get him. Opting to wake him up, she formed an arm on his arm and pushed his hand that he was using to hold his head up while he was sleeping. Like a tree cut from its base, his head fell down on the table with a loud thud, which woke him up in a panic, saying, "Please, Gramps, don't throw in that crocodile's mouth." This little outburst almost made Robin faint. Honestly, what was his grandpa thinking? "Luffy, wake up, this is the 5th time you fell asleep." Robin scolded. They were supposed to be reading, not sleeping. He should at least try to read like her. She truly wanted to share her favorite activity with someone her age. "No, I wasn't sleeping, I was, Luffy tried to come with an excuse, much to amusement of his friend, even if she was still frustrated with him. "Don't lie, Luffy. I saw you sleeping. You were even saying meat in your sleep." Robin cut him off. Luffy knew he was caught since his brother told him he usually says meat while he's sleeping. "I just can't help, Robin. I thought reading about Roger will be fun, but this is so." Luffy stopped when he remembered what happened a while ago. Though much to his effort, the damage was all said and done. Robin frowned at him, wearing a very sad look in her eyes. "I thought you promised you weren't going to say libraries are boring," Robin said with a pout. "But I didn't." The boy uselessly tried to defend himself so Robin wouldn't ignore him. "But you're thinking, weren't you?" Robin inquired firmly. "I'm sorry, Robin. I know you like libraries, but you just can't force me to like them too. It doesn't work that way." Luffy spoke up, hoping to get his point to his friend without hurting her feelings even more. Robin was surprised for a moment, but nodded her head in an understanding manner. True, it wasn't nice to force someone to do something they didn't want. She knew how bad it felt. A single thought crept through her mind at that moment, and it accidentally managed to slip through her mouth. "I bet you think that books are stupid too 'cause I read them," she said in very depressed voice. "What? Of course not, Robin," Luffy told her. "It's true that I don't like books as much as you do, but if someone awesome like you read them, then I think they are awesome too," Luffy said with a very large toothy smile. The girl's face lit up with this compliment. Truly, Luffy being around her was affecting in a very positive way. He made feel happy, wanted, appreciated, and most importantly loved. She looked around and saw that Luffy was already long gone. She then heard him talking to Marine. "Oi, Marine guy, can you let us away so we can play?" the boy asked him. "I'm sorry, Luffy, but you have to settle playing here. Your grandpa made it clear to protect both of you." The Marine replied to him, much to the latter's disappointment. Luffy came to the table he sat on with Robin in his hands. He looked up and remembered something. The tree had windows, so he began walking looking for one. And in a few seconds, he found what he perceived as his way out. He slowly went to Robin and poked her in her shoulder and whispered, "Hey, Robin, want to get out so we can play?" he asked the girl. "No, we're going to get in trouble and the others told us to stay in here so we can stay safe," the girl refused. "Come on, Robin, let's go, and it is not that bad to be in trouble." She looked into his eyes and saw determination that said he wouldn't give up until she went with him. Then it dawned on her, once Garp is finished, he's taking Luffy, so this might be her last chance to play with him. Slowly, she came out of her chair still holding the book she was reading, and asked Luffy, "How are we going to get out?" He pointed to the window and said, "Through there." She wanted to protest, but Luffy cut her off by holding her hands and said, "Please trust me." The physical contact made her cheeks redden a little, but she nodded. Once they reached the window, Luffy pushed it open and said, "Robin, whatever happens don't scream, and when I give you the signal, jump." Robin felt nervous but nodded nonetheless. Luffy then jumped out of the window, which was on a relatively high place. Robin was about to scream till she saw what happened next. Luffy began to suck in air as his belly expanded to comical sizes, causing her eyes to widen like plates. She saw Luffy then land peacefully on the ground. She then noticed him moving his head, telling her to jump. Honestly, she was beyond nervous, but she trusted Luffy. That's why she took a deep breath and jumped all the way down, keeping her scream in her stomach. When she hit Luffy's belly, she bounced off and landed on her feet and said, "Truly, this was the most terrifying experience of my life. But where did you learn to do that?" She managed through her fright of what happened. I used to do it all the time back with my brothers," Luffy said, perking Robin's interest. So he had more than one brother. Could it be that Sabo person he mentioned earlier, she wondered. "Robin," Luffy called out to her as he putted his face in hers. He then proceeded to poke her forehead, "Tag, you're it," and promptly ran away. Furious, she was once again caught off guard. She ran after him. "Monkey D. Luffy, come back here. This is the 100th time you do this." Though she sounded angry, she was beyond happy. She was planning to use the time he had left here to the fullest, but she inwardly wished he would stay for a bit longer. Forever, if it was still possible. "Sengoku ordered your men to do what?" Garp gasped in shock, not believing that his friend ordered Saul's men to kill the scholars. "I know, I was shocked as well, but this is what he told me himself. Then he ordered me to aid in this monstrosity," Saul said in a low voice.
Clover sat down on the ground. He needed a minute to collect himself after what he heard. The world government is planning on erasing Ohara from the map just because of the poneglyphs. He was now sure that the government was hiding something regarding the ancient Slavs.
I see. So that's when you went to Olivia to know the truth of what's really going on," Garp deduced. "Yes, I couldn't just stand around and helplessly watch as innocent lives were thrown in the air like they were nothing," Saul declared. He then proceeded to kneel down on his feet and said, "Please Garp, if you want to arrest me, then do it. But first save this island. The people of this island didn't commit any crime for them to be killed." Seeing this side of Saul made Garp uncomfortable. He was about to speak when Clover interrupted. "Garp, you are the only person here capable of stopping this madness. Don't let the innocent people of this island suffer for a crime they didn't commit," he said, leaving Garp blinking in disbelief. Finally, Garp managed to get over himself and spoke. "I agree with both of you. We can't let this island be destroyed. There is no need for such bloodshed. I'll talk with Sengoku myself and tell him to stop this fiasco." Garp and Sengoku were old pals in the Marines. Their history went way back, as they were known to go toe-to-toe with the former king of pirates Roger. In addition, it was due to their efforts that Shiki the Golden Lion was subdued when he attacked Marine's Ford. Sure, they had different views about serving justice, and rubbed on each other's bad side, but they were friends through and through. At least that's the side Garp hoped to appear when he talked to his friend. He still remembered the Pirate King's Son episode and hoped Sengoku didn't actually know what was going on. The man sometimes got so lost in doing his duties that he forgot to be a human. Truly, his friend needed to choose between being one or not. "Garp, if you're planning on making a call, you should probably make it snappy," Saul said in a very shaky voice as his eyes were glued on something in the distance. Looking to where he is looking at it, both men's faces were drained out of color at the sight before them. In the shoreline of Ohara, there were 10 battleships resting in the water, gently bobbing against the waves. Each one of them carried cannons the size of a house that can be seen from their standing. "It's like they are just standing there, waiting for something," Clover stated, feeling very sick. "Good, that's in our advantage. This means the holder of the signal hasn't reached the tree yet. We need to make it there quickly before he does," Garp said, making both men nod. "I'm coming too," Saul declared. Garp wanted to argue but accepted it since there was no time for that right now. As they began to walk, Saul grabbed Clover and held him in his hands. Each man was hoping to make it quick enough back to the tree to avoid this upcoming senseless slaughter. Olivia was running as fast as she can through the forest. For the all half hour or so, her mind was put on high alert after she was nearly caught by some Marines who happened to stroll through the forest. She finally came out of it and started to make her to the Tree of Knowledge. She ran from house to house trying to conceal her presence. She was slowly inching towards the tree. It has been a while since last time she saw it. It always brought to her good memories. She shook her head. It wasn't the time to take a walk down memory lane, so continued her trek towards the tree. As soon as she arrived, she was forced to duck behind a large tree nearby. "Darn it," she cursed under her breath. "The Marines have beaten her to the place." She steeled herself and went to find their commanding officer. She had a suicidal idea, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Whoever their commander was, she was going to kill him, hoping to put the Marines in a state of disarray and forcing them to leave the island. She knew that for what it's worth her plan wasn't going to work in the slightest, but she had to try. I'm not going to let the island to be destroyed. I'm not going to let my colleagues to be killed. I'm not allowing my daughter to be killed, she said as she moved further down the road. She ran the fastest she could. She needed to find him and end it soon. Her baby daughter will be safe. Robin will be safe, she said to herself, not caring about anything else in the current moment. She readied her rifle she was carrying with her, but as she was running, she heard people coming her way, so she hid behind some bushes. Peeking through them, she managed to see 3 figures. 2 of them made her smile, even if she still held a grudge against one of them. The third figure made her heart stop, but she steeled herself. It was now or never. She jumped in front of Garp, holding the rifle firmly between her hands, pointing it directly between his eyes, and said, "This is as far as you go, Monkey D. Garp. I won't allow you to go any further and harm anyone else." Garp, though surprised a bit that Olivia actually managed to get the drop on him, didn't flinch. He knew when a person was ready to kill, and she wasn't. Though that look in half someone else. He reminded of a mother who did the impossible just to save her son and give him a chance at life. "Come on, Garp, we need to get moving," Saul shouted. Time wasn't on their side and they didn't need Garp to get into of his eccentricities. Clover then looked from Saul's hand to see why Garp halted, and what he saw made him panic. "Olivia, what are you doing?" he asked the woman, who looked at him confused. "What should be done, Professor?" she answered, not moving her eyesight from Garp, though she was very happy to see her old friend and tutor. "Olivia, you're not thinking straight. Please don't do anything rash," Saul called out when he saw what's going on down there. "I'm sorry, but this must be done to save my island," Olivia stated, even though her grasp was becoming increasingly shaky. This was all Garp needed to disarm her and crush the rifle she held. "Nico Olivia," Garp said as he was dusting his hands from the rifle he just destroyed. He then stepped toward the woman, who braced herself for the death that was coming her way, putting a strong face, though a single tear for her daughter managed to slip through. "Garp, don't," Saul yelled, hoping to stop the Vice Admiral from doing whatever he was thinking. Garp simply stood in front of her, and then she asked him, "What are waiting for? Are waiting for me to beg for my life? It's not happening, so just kill me already?" "Olivia," Garp spoke with authority, "I take it from Saul's testament that your entire team was killed during the attack that the Marines launched against you." Olivia replied furiously, "Attack? That's what you call it. It was a slaughter. We didn't even know what was happening. One moment we're sitting, the next cannonballs were raining on us like a storm. My own survival is a miracle by itself." Saul merely lowered his head in shame of this horrible memory. He was responsible for this act of inhumanity, whether he liked it or not. He was leader of his ship. If he was more attentive, then none of that would have happened. Clover was beside himself, still furious about death of his comrades, no matter how many times he heard it. Suddenly Olivia felt something snap inside her as she rushed Garp and grabbed his coat. "Tell me, hero of the Marines, do you take pride in killing innocent people? Does it make your world government happy?" she said as she shook Garp, who didn't seem bothered by all the abuse. "Why do you people work so hard to keep everything a secret? For what purpose do you kill people who aren't committing any crime? Tell me, don't you people claim to support the truth? Why all the unnecessary bloodshed?" she asked as she lost her grip. "We're scholars secrahing for the truth. Not pirates killing people," she said as she finally collapsed crying. "Let me down," Clover told Saul. When he was on the ground, he rushed to his sobbing protege and consoled her. "You poor girl, no matter what we down can't pay for the sacrifices you made, or our friends." Garp then finally spoke. "What you and your crew committed are crimes punishable by death," he declared before continuing. "What happened at sea we've been enough and should have ended there." This caused the woman to look at him confused. "It was you and your comrades who committed the crime, so you got your punishment. However, this island didn't commit anything to be destroyed, so I suggest we go looking for the trigger carrier to stop him," he said, filling the woman with hope that there is still a chance to save her island from destruction and keep her daughter safe. It was a good thing that she managed to stumble into 2 decent Marines, she thought. Soon enough the 4 of them were making their way to the tree. Deep inside the forest, the 2 children came to a halt as their fun game of tug ended. "I win," Luffy breathed out as he sat down. "No fair," Robin complained. "How can you run this fast?" "Well, my brothers and I live in the forest and hunt animals there, so it just comes naturally," he replied. "Wow, it seems you have a lot of fun with them," Robin said. "Yeah, they're the best," he said, though a bit sad at the end, which Robin caught on to. She was about to inquire why when he asked her, "Don't you have any?" Robin looked at him then frowned. "No, I only have a cousin, but she always ignores me because my aunt tells her to." Luffy stuck out his tongue and said, "That aunt of yours sure sounds like a witch." This comment made Robin laugh very hard before she quieted down. "You know, Luffy, I wish I was as strong as you to tell her that," she commented. Luffy then made his way toward her and grabbed her hands and began to speak. "Then you should do it. Next time you see her, I'll be with you so you can tell her off for being an old hag." With this, both children began to laugh. Their laughter was cut off by the sound of someone screaming in the distance. "Damn stupid forest, I should be home, yet here I am walking through a stupid jungle." A man's voice was clearly heard. Both children decided to hide. Then not a moment has passed before three figures in black clothes appeared talking to one another. But something in the man's pocket caught Robin's attention, and it made her blood run cold. In his pocket, a small golden snail can be spotted as it shone through his clothes. In the recent years, scientists have managed to create what they called transponder snails for communication. Even though they were living beings, a mic was implanted on their backs to allow long-range communication. It was basically a genius combination of flesh and machine. Robin began shivering as she finally remembered what that phrase Saul told them meant. Luffy caught to her distressed state and asked her what's wrong. "Luffy, you still remember what Saul told just right?" she asked him, and he nodded. Then she asked him if he saw that snail, to which he also nodded. "Luffy," she said in a serious tone, "I finally remembered what that phrase means." "So what does it mean?" he asked, wanting to know. "That snail in that man's pocket is a golden transponder snail, Luffy," she stated. "It's used only once to summon a buster call attack, which I read about in a book. It means an all-out sea bombardment on a single target till nothing remains." She finished, shaking in fear, finally understanding the full implications of what Saul said to them. "Whoa," was Luffy's only reply. He couldn't even fathom such a horrific thing happening. This was definitely not cool. Then he asked the most important question, "So do you think he'll use it?" Robin looked at him. "I don't think." She was cut off by Sapdine yelling, "I can't wait to destroy this island." This caused the children's head to whip at him. One of the two men following him coughed, clearing his throat, and spoke, "Sir, if I may remind you, first need proof that the scholars are researching the poneglyphs before activating the call." The mention of the poneglyphs brought Robin's mind back to the scholars, the tree, and that ancient slab she saw them working on when she was spying on them. "What? Didn't you hear the report about those scholars killed at sea? They all originated from Ohara," the man said, causing Robin to gasp. Her mother was out at the sea, so does that mean she is dead? She was brought out of her thoughts by his next comment. "This is proof enough to me. To end this evil, we need to cut off the head of the serpent," he exclaimed, pointing to the tree. He then ordered his men to follow him to get this thing over as soon as possible. "This guy is seriously messed up," Luffy commented. This guy was sick as they came. He looked at Robin, who was holding her book tightly as tears filled her eyes. "What's wrong, Robin?" "My mom was with the scholars that were killed," Robin stated, and Luffy got the message, so he hugged her, remembering his own recent lose, and said, "I'm sorry, Robin." Then he came out of it and looked at her with a serious expression. "But there is no time to cry. We need to get that snail," he said. The girl wiped her tears and looked at him. Before she could refuse, a question rose in her head. "Why should I?" He, the boy leaving him, blinking at her. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean why I should save the island when everyone is so mean to me," she answered. Then Luffy's mind slowly pieced everything together. Why everyone in the island looked at Robin that way? Because they hated her. Frankly, why Robin should help them. The children always picked on her. The people of the island always glared at her and made her feel unwanted, and her life at home was absolutely tortuous. For all she cared, she can simply hitch a ride with Luffy and his grandpa and go with them, since she has nothing left with her mother's supposed death to wait for. "But what about the ones who aren't mean to you?" Luffy asked, causing to her blink as a realization hit her. Not all the islanders hated her. There were the scholars who treated her like family, the giant who taught her to laugh when times were rough, and her mother who made her smile every time she thought, even though she's gone now. Then there was the straw-hatted boy who came into her life for the last few days and made her feel happy for once in her life. She was hyped for a moment, only for an epiphany to make her way into her mind. "But Luffy, this is the world government. We're only kids. We can't face it. We're not strong enough," she stated. "Robin," the Ravenhead said with determination in his voice, "I'm going to be king of pirates. If I allow something like that to stop me, then I won't achieve my friends." Though she was filled with awe, Robin wasn't fully convinced. Sensing this, Luffy did something he really didn't want to do, but it needed to be done. He took his hat and planted on Robin's head. The girl gently caught the hat by its brim and lifted it, looking at Luffy, whose eyes were burning with confidence. "I promise you, Robin, that I won't take my hat back until your island is saved." Robin, knowing how important his hat was to him, was filled with determination to save her island, so she stood up and declared, "Let's get this snail. But first we need a plan." The two kids started discussing one as they ran after the three men. Currently at the Tree of Knowledge, a tense standoff was going on which caught the attention of the citizens. "Soldier, please open the way so my men and I can carry out our investigation," an agent said in frustrated voice. "Sir, as I said before, no one is allowed to enter without permission from Vice Admiral Garp," a Marine replied back, just as if not more frustrated than the agent. The citizens started gathering around the scene and began to talk among themselves, wondering what was happening. What is happening here? Aren't agents and Marines on the same side? Why are they fighting? As the argument between the agents and the Marines was rapidly increasing at a constant rate, a thundering sound made his way toward their ears, followed by the sound of screaming. They looked and saw 4 figures approaching. "Saul," a Marine stated, clearly flabbergasted. "Nico Olivia," an agent spoke. Then Garp jumped the distance standing like a rock in front of the agent. "Agent, what is your rank?" The man then gave Garp a salute and said, "CP9. "What are your orders then?" The agent felt like he is being interrogated but didn't want to be on the receiving end of one of Garp's fists. There is suspicion that the scholars are researching the poneglyphs, so we're sent to investigate it. Olivia heard this and became increasingly angry, and started to rush toward the agent before Saul put his hand in her way, stopping her from committing suicide. "You mean you massacred my friends on suspicion alone?" she stated angrily from where Saul was blocking her path. "Olivia, don't do anything stupid. These people won't hesitate twice about killing you," Saul told her. Averting his attention to her, the agent spoke, "What do you think you're doing here?" "Men arranged by." The man's words died in his mouth as Garp stood in his face with a very dark look. "I'll sort this out with your commanding officer. Where's he now?" Not wanting to anger him further than he already did, the agent straightened himself and answered, "Commander Sapdine hasn't arrived yet." If Garp wasn't in a bad mood, before he sure was now. He knew that degenerate slime ball. Knowing he was responsible for this disaster made it even worse. He didn't get to dwell on his thoughts though as a marine bursted from the tree screaming, "The kids, they're gone." "Luffy," Garp screamed. "Robin." Olivia gasped. Pointing a finger to the forest, Garp gave his orders, "Form a patrol, and find the children." Then his men began to scurry around before going in the forest. In the jungle, the kids has long gone formed their plan and now were only waiting for the right moment. Seeing the agents coming their way, Robin noticed a bunch of low-hanging branches, so she used her powers discreetly and hang a couple of them on Sapdine's clothes, causing the man to scream, "That's it. This island is definitely going to get it now." As he was busy trying to get the branches off, Robin formed a couple of arms around his waist without him noticing, and began to feel his coat to find where he kept the golden snail. Then she was something cold and metallic. Signaling to Luffy it was his part, he began to slowly stretch his arm as Robin removed the snail. When he reached the arm, he took the snail and silently made his way back to their hiding spot. "Yes, we did it, Luffy," Robin cheered, looking at their prize. "Come on, let's go give to Gramps," the boy said as they were about to leave. They accidentally stepped on a branch, breaking it. The noise that was emitted caused the agents to look their direction. One of the agents noticed what the boy was holding. "Sir, they got the dial," he said. "What?" Sapdine screamed from where he was struggling, looking to the kids only to see a small boy holding the dial. He then proceeded to blow his top off. "Get that dial back from those damn brats. Run for it," Luffy screamed at the top of his lungs, as he held Robin's hand in one hand and the snail in the other, running into the forest. "Get that snail back," Sapdine shouted at his men, who disappeared in a flash. He tried to give chase, only for his tangled clothes to be ripped and cause him to fall over. He started screeching in frustration like a child who had his toys taken away from him. Luffy and Robin now were running as fast as their legs can carry them inside the forest. They needed to stay out of the sight of the men in black, reach the tree, and finally give Garp the snail so the island can be saved. "Don't worry, Robin, we'll make it," Luffy stated as he ran through forest with Robin. "I know, but I'm getting tired," Robin said as she tried to keep up with Luffy, who was much faster than her. In a flash of black, the two men following Sapdine made their way in front of the kids. Luckily for the young ones, they managed to hide inside the bush at the last second so they weren't found out by the men. "Hiding won't do you any good," one of the men spoke. "What you've done was a big mistake." The children didn't care what he was talking about initially. They needed to find a way out. They started peeking through the bush trying to find a way out, anyway, so they can reach the tree. "You don't know what you got yourself into, do you?" The man continued to speak as he searched for any signs of the kids. This time he managed to grab Robin's interest. "We're the people that the world government sent to do their dirty work, do things the Marines aren't made for or can do." The man proceeded to try fish out any reaction for the kids to find them. This time Luffy heard him and he in turn started to become nervous slightly. "CP9, the agent said, we're sent to find those who annoyed the world government way too much." He went on enjoying the fright he might be inflicting on the children's minds and hearts. "We're assassins sent worldwide to kill those who crossed that thin line one too many times." Luffy and Robin's eyes widened. Whether be it men, women, or even children. The man's speech caused the children to grow highly nervous, especially Robin, who was never put in this kind of situation before. As tears began to form in her eyes, Luffy grabbed her hand, causing her to look at him. That's when he gave a look that said, "Stay strong no matter what." As Robin sniffed back her tears, her mind began to work double time as she surveyed her surroundings from the bush to find a way out. That's when it hit her. Crossing her arms over her chest, she formed a pair of eyes on a nearby bush, in addition to a mouth on a tree behind the agent. She then used the mouth to say, "You won't be able to catch us, you big troll." Easy to say that grabbed the attention of the agent, who was boosting. His eyes went immediately saw the blue eyes shining in the dark of the forest, which promptly disappeared when he reached them and said, "Got you." The only thing he found was a whole lot of nothing. He then heard the rustling of bushes in front of him courtesy of some phantom hands Robin had produced to give them the illusion that they were running away in a certain direction. "You can't run forever," the agent shouted. He looked to his partner and said, "Come on, follow me." Said partner scanned the entire scene with a suspicious eye, but followed his comrade nonetheless given that this was their current lead to bring back the snail. When the sound of the two men diminished, Robin made a couple of eyes to check if the coast was clear. When she deemed it to be safe enough to come out, both children exited the bush. Luffy stood with his eyes shining at Robin. "That was so amazing, Robin," the boy exclaimed, excited by seeing her using her power. Robin smiled at her cleverness. "It was all because of you. It wouldn't have happened if you didn't keep me calm," Robin said, praising him. "Yeah, I have to admit that was quite unusual." Robin and Luffy nodded their heads, until they realized that neither of them spoke this time. Turning around, they saw Sapdine looking at them like a cat looks at a cornered mouse. "Well, I got to give to both of you. You're going to make my report quite interesting," the man spoke, chuckling darkly. "I mean devil fruit users, and children at that. Whoever heard of such a thing?" Looking around, he managed to spot the snail inside Luffy's hand. He began to speak gently. "Now, why don't you give that snail and be a good little boy?" Luffy saw him trying to approach, so he took a couple of steps back, and said, "You're going to blow up the island, aren't you?" Sapdine could only blink at this, and then continued to talk. "What? Of course not, that's outrageous. I would never blow this island. Harming all the innocent souls living here." He tried to talk the kids into giving him the snail with his sweet talk, even if it wasn't working in the slightest. "Then what about the scholars you killed at sea?" Robin spoke, still said about her mother's apparent fate. This caused Sapdine's jolly look to fall for a second before he regained it. "Now, listen, deciphering the poneglyphs is really a big crime. It is a really big mistake which can get you in a lot of trouble. That's why I'm sent here to investigate if anyone is deciphering them," he told them with the nicest voice he can muster. The children still didn't buy it. Also, it wasn't us who did that, it was the Marines, honest. The two children merely blinked at the slimy commander. Then Robin said, "You're going to investigate by cutting the serpent's head," she stated, copying Sapdine's speech word by word. The commander's face twitched as the fame he was longing for was now in the children's hands. "Smart one, aren't you?" he said. "Smarter than you, that's for sure," Luffy said while giggling. Like a kettle on a stove, Sapdine's patience finally boiled over. He ran toward the children, screaming at the top of his lungs. "Give me that snail." He reached for his sword and swung it at them. Robin gasped as the sword came down, only for Luffy to grab her and jump aside, avoiding the slash. Luffy then proceeded to rotate his arm and threw it forward, screaming, "Gum gum pistol." Against his expectations, the hit missed. This made Sapdine smile in triumph as he saw his chance. It didn't last for long though, as Luffy's arm ricocheted off a tree, hitting Sapdine square in the back of the head. The force behind the hit caused the cowardly commander to fall flat down on the ground and skid a couple of feet. Luffy looked at Robin and said with a laugh, "That wasn't what I was going for, but it worked out nicely." He then asked, "Do you think that's it?" Sapdine jumped from behind him saying, "What do you think?" as he ran towards them. Robin, acting quickly, spawned two arms on his feet which tied his shoes together. He then fell and started to squirm like a worm. The children began to laugh as he came back for a third time. This time Robin created two hands, shutting his eyes, blocking his view as he began to swing his sword like a blind man. As this was going on, Luffy tapped the girl's shoulder and told her to hop on his back. She did as she was told. Luffy then went on to shot his arm to a branch. Grabbing it, he launched himself and Robin on it. When they were securely sitting on the branch, she finally released her power, making Sapdine fall and smack his head into a tree. The children couldn't keep themselves from laughing as the commander made a fool of himself. Said man looked up at where the laughter was coming from and made an animalistic growl, and screamed, "Get down here and give that damn snail." The children didn't acknowledge him, and Luffy said, "Why don't you make us?" Robin then said, "I won't allow you to destroy this island." Gritting his teeth in anger, Sapdine ran and started to scale the tree. Luffy then wrapped his arm around Robin's waist and jumped to another one. When Sapdine finally reached the children, he launched out his arm to grab them, only for the rubber boy to jump to another tree, causing the branch he was on to shake up and dused Sapdine to lose his grip and fall on the ground with a disbelieving look on his face. The children, now safely on the other tree, forgot what kind of situation they were in and how serious it was, and again laughed their heads off. Mumbling as he came out from the dirt, Sapdine looked at the young ones and said in a dark voice, "I'm going to get this snail and force you two to watch as I blow this island into Kingdom Come." He grabbed his sword and ran to the tree children were on and proceeded to hit it. Tilting his head in confusion, Luffy asked him, "What are you doing?" "I'm cutting this tree down and you with it," he howled at them. "But this could take forever." "Shut up, I don't care, I'm getting this snail one way or another," Sapdine shouted, ignoring whatever the children had to say. Looking up, he saw the kids laughing at him, causing a blood vessel to almost pop from his rage. He then screeched at the top of his voice, I won't be humiliated by a couple of brats." "No need to, you are doing a good job by yourself," Robin responded, which was met by incomprehensible screaming and cursing. The two giggled a bit more. That's when Luffy lifted his hat from Robin's head and put on her head the snail sideways, so they won't trigger it accidentally. Robin shivered as she knew now that the fate of her home rested on her head, literally. Luffy then planted the hat again on her head, honoring his promise, and told her, "Robin, climb on my back again, and this time hold really tight. It's going to be a bumpy ride." He then proceeded to jump from one tree to another like it was nothing, further impressing Robin with his abilities. Blinking in a sheer state of disbelief, Sabdine shook his head and caught himself. "I'm going to get that snail and Salughtheru brats, whatever it costs." Garp was going back and forth in front of the Tree of Knowledge as his nerves were practically on fire. He hoped at any second the Marines he sent would come back with Luffy squirming in their grasp, screaming he was going to be king of pirates. Olivia just sat silently looking at the forest, praying to every deity that she knew of for Robin to run out of the forest. Clover stood beside the distraught woman, hugging her in an attempt to try and make her feel better. Saul looked at them with a worried look in his eyes. Several knots formed in his stomach when he knew CP9 was on the case. Knowing that the kids were out there in the forest didn't help him either with these monsters around. The agents were in a state of sheer chaos without their commander beside them. They were like sheep without the shepherd. As for the Marines, they were still preventing the agents' occasional attempts to sneak inside the tree. They kept an eye for the squad Garp sent, but with time passing by, they began to lose hope that the squad will find the children. The scholars inside the tree were beginning to grow restless. Cabin fever was growing at an increasing rate inside the library. They looked outside and saw Olivia and Clover both alive and well, which gave them hope that the situation might be resolved peacefully. The citizens of the island were flowing on the scene, though the Marines and agents prevented them from going close to the area, causing a couple of scuffles to occur. If this isn't contained quickly, a riot was going to happen, and that not counting the hellfire waiting to occur in the distant. A rustle in the bushes caught everyone's attention, especially Garp and Olivia, who were hoping it was news about the children. Suddenly two agents came out the forest, running in full speed as if they were chasing someone but failed to catch up to him. "Damn it, I thought we had them," the agent from earlier spoke. The agent then noticed a large figure approaching them quickly, readying himself for a fight. He was shocked when he saw a very angry Garp staring at him. "Vice Admiral Garp." The agent stood at attention and saluted the hero of the Marines. "Agent, state your rank," Garp spoke. "CP9, sir," the man replied. "What is your mission, Agent?" Garp inquired. "We're responsible for the protection of Chief Sabdine." "Where's Commander Sabdine?" Garp asked the agents. "Sir, in our way to commence with our investigation, two young kids were able to intercept us and take away the buster called Trigger. Commander Sabdine is trying to get the snail," the man responded, still standing at attention. Though Garp's face didn't show any emotions the moment he heard that, the vein throbbing in his forehead was a whole different manner. Taking a deep breath, he managed to speak. "Tell me, is one of the kids wearing a straw hat on his head?" The agents looked at him before the same man replied with, "Yes, sir," though he wasn't able to say it completely as Garp's massive fist bulldozed his face, sending him falling in a tree, knocking him out from the force of the impact. "That kid is my grandson," Garp roared, causing most of the agents to tremble in fear as they processed who those two were chasing. Suddenly one brave agent overcame his fear and drew a gun pointing at Garp's head. He declared, "Now listen here. I don't care who you are, stand aside or—" The man's speech was cut off a burst of wind. When looked at his gun, he saw it falling apart in pieces as if it was sliced. He looked behind him and saw Bogart putting his katana back into its sheath. The man looked at him with an ever-permanent scowl and said in low, deadly tone, "Try that stunt again and there will be further consequences." The partner of the knocked-out man tried to make a retreat back into the forest using the ongoing chaos as a cover. However, his plans failed when Garp saw him. Garp couldn't help but feel that this agent looked kind of familiar. That's when his mind began to ring bells. If this monster managed to make it back into the forest, it's over for both of the kids. "Stop right there and don't even move a muscle," the hero of the Marines barked at the retreating agent, who cursed his luck. "If you as so much turn your head towards the forest, you'll deal with me," Garp stated. The agent looked at Garp with defiance in his eyes for a moment before walked toward the Vice Admiral and stood at attention. "Bogart, keep an eye on him," Garp ordered him. Olivia was in shock. She couldn't believe her ears. Everything she'd done till this moment was for Robin to be spared the wrath of the world government. Only for fate to tangle her daughter and, worst of all, have the world government chase her. This was so ridiculous, it just can't be happening. This is just a horrible nightmare, she kept telling herself as tears continued to cascade down her eyes. All she wanted now was for her daughter to run into her embrace so she can keep her safe. Clover fell down on his feet. His mind was having a hard time processing what was happening. He put his hands on his head as he completely came to the realization that the fate of Ohara rested in the hands of two children, Robin being one of them. He called out for whatever was hearing him in the sky to end this madness. Saul blinked in his belief. The children intercepted CP9. Luffy and Robin were somehow able to take the buster called trigger from CP9. His mind was finding a hard time believing this. His eyes then began to wander till he spotted someone that made his blood run cold. He stood up and was about to make a run for it into the jungle, when Garp stood in his way. "What hell are you doing, Saul? Did you lose it?" Garp demanded to know. "I'm going to find the kids. Their lives are endangered right now," Saul replied. "So you endanger them even more. Tell me, what will happen when the ships see you running up and about around the island?" "They will start attacking regardless if they are given the signal or not," Garp argued. "But we can't sit here and hope for the best if a monster like him is here. If he even manages to slip through our hands, he definitely killed the children mercilessly," Saul yelled, pointing his finger at the agent Bogart was holding. Garp couldn't agree more with Saul, but doing this will put everyone's life at risk. He re-anarchy to the mix than there already is. "Don't worry, the Marines are out there. They'll find the children in no time," Garp said in a decisive tone. He and Saul then engaged in a staring battle for a while. Finally, Garp's glare was able to overcome that of Saul's. The giant being then sat down and said, "I hope you know what you're doing, Garp." The man didn't answer him as he was lost in his thoughts. All of this was his fault. Luffy shouldn't be here on Ohara, threatened to be engulfed in a fiery hell. He should be on Dawn Island training with Ace, pulling pranks on Dayton, and screaming nonsense about becoming Pirate King. Maybe he should have listened to Dayton and Makino about how stupid his plan is. If anything happened to him, he won't be able to forgive himself. He looked towards the forest, determination in his eyes to turn this whole thing around, and to have his grandson safe. Then he would have to go on another hunting trip to find the other knucklehead. Truly, he started to ask himself what kind of situation he put himself in with this stupid idea of his. He then felt droplets of rain hitting his face. Looking up, he saw that the clouds were dark as they can get and were swiveling around, threatening a thunderstorm. The hero of the Marines can only hope that the situation doesn't end with the two children dying. Luffy and Robin were making good time in their race to the Tree of Knowledge. With every leap Luffy took, the image of the tree grew bigger. Even with the rain falling on them, they can still see it clearly. A couple more jumps, and they're home free. "We're going to make it, Robin," Luffy informed his friend. "Yeah, the tree is growing closer by the second," Robin replied, excited to see her safe haven. As they got closer, they managed to see Saul's huge figure. "Robin, look at Saul," Luffy stated happily. "Saul, we're coming," Robin screamed at the top of her lungs. Though the sound of thunder in the sky accompanied with the distance they were, it made her voice unable to reach him. "Only a couple more jumps," Luffy said. As he made the jump for the next tree he was aiming at, the damp branch caused him to slip and fall. Fortunately for them, they managed to fall on a bush which cushioned the impact. "Are you alright?" Luffy asked as he groaned on the ground from the fall. "Yeah, nothing too serious," the girl replied back. "I wouldn't be too sure about that." They caused the children to turn around in horror. They now faced a battered, beat up, and very angry Sapdine with his clothes ripped all over. "Now, look at that," he spoke as he gripped his sword tightly ready to strike. "Look at what the wind brought to me. Seems like the tides finally turned to my side." The man stepped forward towards the kids, causing both to scramble backwards away. The fear they so far eluded managed to catch up to them. "Do you two know the slightest idea what I've been through because of you?" he asked. "You're just annoying little devil fruit freaks. You seriously believed you can go against us, the world government, and survive?" Robin began to shake in fear, desperately clinging to Luffy to ease her fright. "You two are going to wish that you weren't born after I'm done with you. I can send you off to labor camps where you won't see the light of day ever again. Or how about I ship you off to celestial dragons? I heard they like toying with devil fruit freaks. Better yet, I can make both of you my son's personal salves." As he went on raving and ranting, the children grew increasingly terrified, tears forming in their eyes and about to fall. "Now, don't tell me you're about to cry. Where's that big talk from before?" the man mocked them. "Or did you just choose something bigger than you can handle? Look at yourselves, you can't fight. You're too weak. You can't even use your powers straight. You're nothing but stupid brats. And when you die no one's going to care." He toyed with them even further. "So any last words before I end this?" Luffy looked back at Robin, who fear managed to get the best of her. Then his mind went back to a certain blonde-haired boy. He wasn't going to allow anything to Robin, not again. All the fear that was inside suddenly burned away and replaced by a feeling he couldn't explain, but it was enough for him to keep going on. "Yeah, just one thing," Luffy spoke, grabbing Robin's hand quickly. He shouted, "In your dreams, Kunckle head. You're not going to catch us." He then ran away as quickly as possible, dragging Robin with him. "Robin, don't worry, I won't allow anything to happen to this island as long as I'm alive," Luffy said with fierce vigor in his eyes. Sapdine groaned in anger at the useless attempt and started to follow them at a causal pace, not wanting to bother himself anymore. "Luffy," Robin said quietly as she was running alongside him. "Yeah, Thanks for being my friend for the last couple of days. That was the best days of my life. She confessed to him, smiling with tears still in her eyes. Luffy looked at this and the fire from earlier burned harder. He looked at her and declared, "We're still going to be friends." Suddenly he picked up his pace and ran faster, causing her to stumble. He refused for things to end this way. What happened with Sabo wasn't going to happen again. Sabdine looked and his face contracted in horror. He spotted the tree of knowledge was in sight, so he started to run, lifting his sword. And oh, no, the crazy commander started to yell. "I won't allow children to outsmart me," he shouted as he began to catch up to them. Luffy and Robin ran as fast as their legs could carry them, finally seeing the tree of knowledge in their sights with Sabdine hot on their tail. With one last burst of energy, they ran through the bushes, screaming at the top of their lungs bloody murder. The loud cry from behind the bushes was more than enough to alert everyone. Looking towards the source, they saw a beyond terrified Luffy and Robin running out of the forest. "Grandpa," Luffy cried out for his old man. "Help us," Robin screamed. "Luffy," Garp gasped. "Robin," Olivia exclaimed. Then everyone noticed that someone was following them when a crazy-looking Sabdine came running after them, swinging sword. The children then tripped and began to tumble on the ground as their feet finally gave away. When they fell, the hat on Robin's head fell down, something gold shining in it as it fell to the ground. Sabdine then closed the distance, screaming as he swung his sword to end this little act. "You miserable brats are going to pay for everything and be sent to hell along with this despicable island." The children clung to each other, prepared for whatever was coming. They waited for a while, but nothing happened. Robin dared to crack an eye open, and saw Luffy's grandpa shielding them with his hand from the sword. For a moment she could have sworn she saw his hand shone black. "Chief Sabdine," Garp spoke in a very calm voice that didn't show any of the raging storms inside him. "What do you think on God's earth are you doing?" Now directly looking at the chief. "Chasing children around with a sword in your hands?" Sabdine looked at the man that intercepted him with murderous look, wishing to end his life. All of this was thrown outside the window when he saw who stood in his way. It was Garp the Fist. All the thoughts about terraforming Ohara in nothing but ashes and charcoal, and killing the annoying brats who caused him a massive headache, died down when fear replaced them. He tried to speak, but nothing managed to come out of his mouth. I. Then a random marine noticed shining object in Luffy's hat and said, "What's that?" Everyone looked to the hat and their eyes widened. "The Buster called Trigger." One of the agents spoke, causing the already screamed Sabdine to sweat bullets. The agent that Bogard was holding managed to blindside the man, shoving him to the ground. He then made a quick dash to the trigger. He extended his arm and was about to reach it, when a hand from nowhere appeared, snatching it away. He looked and traced the hand back. The most intriguing thing, the boy from earlier that managed to trick them had eaten a devil fruit. So that how he managed to grab the snail unnoticed. He also came to the conclusion that the girl must also have some sort of devil fruit power that helped her deceive them in the jungle. Luffy then held the trigger up to his grandpa and said, "Grandpa, he was going to blow the island because he doesn't want to be here." The citizens didn't believe him, but the Marines, a couple of agents, Garp, Olivia, Clover, and Saul knew that the man was evil enough to do such a thing. Sabdine, who didn't hear what the boy called Garp, snarled at the boy and said, "Shut up, you brat. It's just a precaution I need to take in case the scholars are actually deciphering the poneglyphs." The cowardly commander only received angry stares, giving him the message that he should have kept quiet. "Don't tell me, you're going to believe a kid over me," Sabdine roared at Garp. "If it's my grandson, then yes, I believe him." Garp spoke. Garp knew Luffy can't lie. No, seriously, it was impossible for him to lie. Anything, even a small white lie, will cause the boy to start contracting. It was as if he physically wasn't able to lie. If Sabdine wasn't terrified before, he sure was now. He was chasing the grandson of the hero of the Marines, threatening to kill him. Garp then looked at Sabdine and said in very happy tone, "You know what, let's forget this ever happened." Then he proceeded to shove his fist into Sabdine's face, causing the commander to fly in the air before landing with a powerful thud. Sabdine was now unconscious, with his tongue sticking out, murmuring in his current state about stupid brats and fame. Garp looked at the pathetic-looking chief, who lost a couple of teeth due to the hit, and told him, "We'll talk later." Robin then felt a pair of arms wrap around her. When she looked, she saw Clover, who told her, "Robin, thank God, you're all right." "Professor," Robin then melted and let out the flood of tears that she was holding through the entire nerve-wracking ordeal. "I was afraid that he was going, and I just had to." She started to speak incoherently. The old man then started to pet her head in calming manner and said, "It's okay now. You're safe with me." A sudden noise grabbed both of their attention back to the tree, who the scholars began to pour out of it. "Robin, are you all right? Did that man hurt you?" Robin looked at their faces and smiled, seeing her family so worried about her. Sure, her mom was dead, but at least she had another family. Garp made his way toward Luffy, who lowered his head, fuming all the way. He snatched the buster called Trigger, shoving it inside his pocket, and began to chastise his grandson. "What in the world were you thinking, Luffy? Do you have any idea what could have happened if you activated by accident? Did that little piece of sanity finally leave your head? Who were you? Garp could have gone on, but Luffy's outburst silenced him. Shut up, I don't care. The boy then began to blabber. I couldn't just let them have their way. I couldn't just leave them destroy Robin's home, not after Sabo. I couldn't. Garp looked at his grandson holding back his tears, and immediately his temper went down. He then crouched on one knee and asked Luffy, not going to cry? Luffy looked up to him and said, no, why not? Garp probed. Because crying is for the weak. I cried when Shanks saved me. I cried when Ace and Sabo saved again. I cried when. Garp gently lifted his sibling and hugged him and said, Luffy, crying doesn't make you weak. It's just show you've been holding it in for too long. Hearing this, Luffy's eyes widened and promptly began to cry, spilling gibberish the entire time. Garp began to comfort him by saying, it is okay, Luffy. What you did was the basic definition of idiotic, but also brave. I couldn't have done any better. Robin, who was now in the scholar's arms, now remembered something. She went out to the field and picked up Luffy's hat. She then made her way toward him as Garp gently put him down. Luffy looked at her and smiled. She proceeded to put his hat back on his head and said, thanks for saving my island, Luffy. The boy blushed a little and turned his head away, saying, no problem, Robin, you're my friend. Seeing her chance, Robin then gave him a small peck on the cheek, which caused the boy's face to turn crimson. Why did you kiss? He asked in a shocked state. I wanted to, she replied innocently. But that's gross, he retorted back. No, it's not. Yes, it is, prove it then. Luffy then tried to say something but found that he was losing the argument. This little moment between the kids caused the adults to start laughing as the mood began to lighten up. Luffy was about to scream, demanding them to shut up, but something caught his attention. Poking the girl on her shoulder, he asked, Robin, do you know her? He asked, pointing at a woman standing beside the tree away from everyone else. The scholars held their breath in. They never took into account that Olivia being here meant that her daughter will see her again. The moment was tense when Robin put her gaze on the woman, who stiffened instantly. Luffy noticed this but went on regardless. She kind of looks like you, same eyes, same skin color, same hair, but hers white. He stopped for a while, then asked Robin the million-berry question, is she your mom or something? Robin, who was now looking at the woman, couldn't believe her eyes. No way, this couldn't her mom. She died at sea, didn't she? As all the scenarios played in her head, she remembered a distant memory that always brought her joy. It was that of a tanned-skinned woman with white snow hair playing with her. She started to make her way toward her. When she was in front of her, she asked, are you my mom? Olivia was frozen in sight. Here was her daughter in front of her and she wanted to know the truth. What should she do? She wondered. Should she say the truth, deny it, or feign ignorance? All those played in her head, but she finally decided to go with the first. Yes, I am. Olivia spoke warmly. If you don't know yet, my name is Nico Olivia. This left multiple shocks. First with agents who didn't know that this criminal had a daughter. Second with citizens who in turn didn't know that the freak of the island was one of its brightest scholars' kid. Garp looked at the scene with curiosity, wanting to know how this will play out. Saul and the scholars held their breath in. Luffy, sensing how tense the situation has become, decided to stay put. I know, the girl spoke with tears in her eyes. Clover told me on our way that you aced an archaeology exam with flying colors. Olivia brought this up and continued. I'm truly proud. Then she gained a face full of guilt. I know I wasn't a good mother toward you. I left when you needed me the most. I ran away from my responsibilities and left you here all alone. I don't deserve to be called a mother anymore. If you want me to go and never me see again, I understand, the woman said as she stood up, fighting her own tears. She was utterly shocked when Robin jumped and latched herself on her neck and cried, no, I don't. You want to go? You don't how long I've waited for this moment. You couldn't imagine how horrible it felt when I thought you died without seeing you again. The girl wept a little before going on. I've always knew if I did what you do, you'd come, and it worked, so please don't leave. Robin, the woman, held her daughter as she also began to cry, happy to see her daughter after all those years. Clover and the scholars all smiled that this ended well. Saul simply wailed from happiness. Garp just smiled along with Luffy, both showing a large D grin. After a couple of minutes of crying, the two girls stopped wiping their tears away. Robin then grabbed her mother's hand and took toward Luffy. Mommy, Robin spoke, filled with joy of saying this word, this is my friend, Luffy. He protected from that guy, pointing to a knocked out Sapdine. Olivia then sat down and said, my precious daughter. Luffy only blushed and said, no problem. Robin is my friend, I wouldn't want to see her hurt or sad. This caused the little girl to blush. Olivia caught to both their reactions and smiled. It was cute that they had a crush on each other, she thought. They all then heard a thundering sound and looked to say Saul, who's been quiet all the time, leaning forward, taking his turn on checking on the kids. Robin, Luffy. You both sure had a crazy night, didn't you? Are guys hurt or anything? Saul, both kids cheered happily. Yeah, we sure did, Saul. Also, we're good, thanks for asking, Robin said. You should see me punch that guy in the head, Luffy declared excitedly. I'm sure you did. Saul then started to laugh. Garp then came and stood beside Luffy when Olivia said, you sure have an amazing grandson. Garp scratched his head, I do, don't I? The citizens of Ohara, who had their fill of being left in the dark for so long, started to riot demanding answers. What in the world is going on here? Why are there Marines and agents on our island? Does it have to do something with that devil brat over there? I bet it does. Can't you Marines just haul her off to prison or something? Yeah, this freak is better off dead than alive. Hearing this, Robin screamed and ran towards Saul to hide with him, afraid that the islanders will finally harm her. Saul frowned at the island citizens. Sure, the scholars weren't bad, but the others were sure rotten to the core. Olivia stood there speechless, seeing how the islanders were in theory calling out for her daughter's blood. Looking at Robin, she asked in shock, is that how everyone was treating you? Robin's silence was all the answer she needed as she lowered her head in shame. Oh, how she wished right now to just march out there and give them a piece of her mind. Luffy began huffing and puffing, angry at how the people of the island was treating his friend. After everything they went through to help them, they thank her by this. Garp, noticing this, stepped forward and cleared his throat. However, this didn't work in stopping the islanders still rioting about practically murdering a young girl. Garp then slammed his foot into the ground, shaking the entire island, silencing everyone. Good, he said to no one in particular. Citizens of Ohara, Garp hollered, you may not aware of this, but your home island was in grave danger. 5 days ago, the Marines received information about scholars breaking the rules and attempting to decipher the poneglyphs. They were intercepted and punished for their crimes. He said, leaving a bad taste in Olivia's, Clover's, and the scholars' mouths while Saul lowered his head in shame. Commander Sabdine of the world government came here in order to investigate if others were breaking the rules here. If he did find evidence, he was going to bust or call the island erasing from the face of existence. This caused multiple gasps of horror from the crowds. But 2 young and brave souls, refusing to allow this to happen, intercepted him. He then took Luffy in one hand and ushered for Saul to give him Robin, taking her in the other. He lifted them, putting them on his shoulders, and continued on with his speech, and took the buster called Trigger from him. The citizens then took a closer look at the children, and were shocked to see was one of them the very curious devil child, while the other was a smiling young boy with a straw hat. Whether you chose to acknowledge it or not, these brave kids are your heroes. The kids began to look at the crowd a little bit, but were quickly disheartened by how the citizens didn't seem to care. Then they heard a clap from behind them, courtesy of Clover. Following his lead was Olivia and the scholars. Saul then began to clap his giant hands, laughing the entire time. Even the Marines began to clap, happy how the children fought for what they believed in. The agents, on the other hand, weren't happy due to the fact that the entire investigation was stopped by a pair of kids. As the clapping went on, the people of Ohara began clapping, starting with 1, then 2, and so on. Though there still remained a stubborn few who refused to acknowledge the devil child as their hero, refusing the hero of the Marines' words. Robin began to laugh as the dark clouds above finally broke apart. Looking at Luffy, she cheered, Luffy, look, we are heroes. Yeah, Luffy said, I prefer being a pirate, but this works too. The children then began to laugh as the sun shone brightly on the island that avoided near disaster.